major contributions at this republic state level. Amekuja kwa that level. Even as we you know the nearly 99% of the population we have here who is wale wote tuko hapa tumezaliwa wakati Kenya huyu huko kwa uongozi. Isn't it?
Except me.
You are lot. And therefore when you are writing a critique, always remember you are coming from a time where you do not know the environment which was there at that time when there were interrupts in Eastras here. The whole of this Mombasa Road, both sides, it has been put up when I'm in a government. In fact, the allocations. The allocations, we had a central government plot allocation committee chaired by Gigi Kariuki. And look at the development the way it is now. Now we reach a level that we have this express. Because the population, the vehicles,
too many.
Tarmac here. But here Nairobi, Mombasa, Thika, there was nothing. No.
It's a country that virtually came from the dust.
We have grown very fast. I tell people, if you want to know how much you have grown, compare the Kenya shilling on exchange rate with Uganda, with Tanzania. And in 1976, they were at par. This one here,
of a shilling.
Yes, it has now become a hard currency for the region.
That's true.
Isn't it? Meaning that you've grown very, very well. In terms of education, mumesoma.
Actually, a very interesting fact is that the free primary education introduced by President Mwai Kibaki,
yes,
the lot that entered school and started enjoying free primary education,
yes,
will actually be voting for the first time in this election.
Yes.
The lot that started enjoying the free primary education offered by President Mwai Kibaki, which is one of his biggest legacies, that even when naysayers said it was not possible to have free primary education in Kenya,
I know
President Kibaki made it work.
President Clinton said, I want to go and see that gentleman. Remember he said it,
yes,
that he got surprised on those very hard decisions. But he saw, without education, the country is likely to again start going down. And because during the time from President Moi, there was a bit of a problem on the economy. He did very well at the political level. I quote him. He's the one who said, when I compare myself with Kibaki, he did very well. He has done very well on the economy, but he has not done well in
I think now we're heading
politics.
This is Parliament.
Yes.
That's just how quick the military is.
Precision,
military precision. The execution, of this very particular event is conducted with military precision. Like you can see now, we are already on Parliament Road. That means then the military are going to take the body of the late president, draped in that Kenyan flag, into the Parliament buildings. By 9 o'clock, we expect President Uhuru Kenyatta to be leading the nation in this solemn occasion. Let's continue with the legacy of the president. Yes.
I remember during the time of Mr. Kenyatta, when this one it came, but that time it was carried by they carried it. The
carriage was
it was pulled by the askari. No, the askari. The askari did it very well. As it was entering, the late President Nyerere, I was attached. Because I was attached to his grouping.
Okay.
When we went to Pan-Africa, alisema nyinyi ona hawa vile wamefanya within this period of CG 20 something days. Look at what the so many few days. Look at the level of precision they have come. He was admiring the way we did that state funeral, because this particular country, in terms of military precision, is only that we don't praise ourselves. If we were, you can definitely agree that they are just tops, and this brings a lot of respect to the international community. So we are normally very critical of ourselves inside here, but over there, I can tell you, my colleagues, I was with the regional commissioner the other side when I was in peace in Nyanza, and you tell me how admirable they are. I gave him a tour of Nyanza for 5 days. 5 days he toured Nyanza. As a neighboring regional commissioner. And I remember him telling me, hao watu wako akisi wanacharasha wanalima hata hapa kwa barabara na wako na napier grass. Why can't you allow me to bring some of them to Tarime? I give them land. But but the president that time felt Mzee Mwai, when I consulted, akasema no, don't do that because wakiumizwa kule nani atawatetea. You can remember, you can see
and
that
government must always protect
because he was so much people based. Anaangalia maslahi ya wale watu. But the point here is the admiration of this country, which we who are in do not seem to appreciate. We are so critical, we cannibalize, we are so critical of ourselves, we forget the blessings God has given this country. Maybe I'm talking this way like a provincial commissioner who has seen it on the ground. Unaenda kwa mtoto, ako na malaria, na wanagoja akamba basi, ilete drugs, ilete pesa kutoka Nairobi kwa mtoto wake. You can imagine. And you feel, one time I told the president he put drugs in an aircraft, brought them to Nyanza. Because I was in Homa Bay, hapa Kedubi. This kind of, it affected me. It affected me, so I had now to relate to the president.
And there's a shot of where the body of President Mwai Kibaki will be lying for the next 3 days. Every 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. the public will be able to view the body, and that is from tomorrow and Wednesday. Today is just President Uhuru Kenyatta and senior government officials who will be doing this. But as you can see, again, even here, it's a military event. You don't even see the presence of police officers just around there. This is a purely military event as the military honors its immediate former commander-in-chief. And you've taken me a bit back with some of the things you were talking about the military, and particularly during President Mzee Jomo Kenyatta's time.
Because I was a DO that time.
Because you were a DO that time. And interestingly, again, the president died while in office. The state funerals we have held before of President Mwai and now of President Kibaki are of retired presidents. And that time it was a serving president.
The actual, and therefore, in this particular case, during my time, there was always a DO on duty. So that the military, the citizens, they are a bit too hot.
Yes.
They are therefore able to be helped where the citizen is moving in a certain direction. That DO comes in to balance it. Even in State House, we the morning was being done, the viewing was in the State House. You can remember the picture that you can remember very quickly is of Jaramogi Odinga when he came and you would see the lining up, kule nje, the handling of the citizens were by the DOs, so that they are able to help the GSU. Because of the levels of protocol. But the sense here that we should not forget, for somebody to reach that level of respect, they must have done a lot to this country. That's why the whole country is at a standstill, low-key in a lot of activities, mourning, in recognition. Asante, asante. Ni kama tunamwambia Mwenyezi Mungu asante kwa kutupatia huyu Mkenya, ametufanyia. And the document that I have touched, if you remember no, you are not there. When he was Minister for Finance, he is one person who made us all very proud of when he is reading the budget. Why? He will read it and then he comes to the time he says, and now we go to the Committee of Ways and Means, the Ways and Means, the way he would increase the prices, say for cigarettes and alcohol, people expected it and they were happy. Because that time, we were trying to contain alcoholization of this country. Unfortunately, talking like a founder of Nakada, feel very sorry. Yes, very, very sorry.
And we'll talk about that in a bit. But before we, showed the pictures from Parliament, and as you can see now, the casket is being removed from that carriage and will be taken for preparation so that it is kept at that very point to enable the viewing. And you can see a red carpet laid right from the gate of Parliament buildings all the way into the entrance of the chambers is how you see this respect being offered to President Mwai Kibaki. A red carpet right from the entrance of the parliament buildings as the body is removed from the carriage for preparation ahead of the body viewing. But I remember we were talking about his legacy, Joseph Kaguthi, in terms of education. And you were talking about Clinton when he said, I want to go and see this man who wants to make education free.
Not only that, education. You know, he was a communicator par excellence in my county, Nyandarua. Maybe I take this because I picked it and started propagating it when I was doing the campaign against drug abuse. How did he put it? On alcohol. You know, we had a certain alcohol called Kairase, the one which destroyed the men so badly. Yes. There were 5 factories in Naivasha which were competing to bring alcohol to the east. They came to Nyanza, I refused. I don't have the mandate. He said it in a baraza, akasema, wewe ulikunywa leo, unakunywa leo, kesho unakunywa, juzi ulikunywa, hata kesho unataka. What do you think you are? Wachana na hiyo, hata mimi nilikuwa na, wacha hiyo. You know, inakumaliza, itakumaliza. You know, it now is handed over now to us, the bureaucrats, including the chiefs and assistant chiefs. Keep on putting what the president is saying, so that because people listen to their leaders. They listen to them. Why is the president saying like that? And from there, that angle, we would like to see more of leaders who are coming to this country. Keep on telling us. I remember the current president talking about the judiciary, the spirit, and this other one, and its guidance, because they are leaders, they are guided. So all those are now legacies. And if you just pick the Kuta Bukusa alone.
Right. Just a bit, let's just have a listening of what is happening there, the national anthem, as the body makes its way to Parliament.
Uhuru is not here.
All right, those are live pictures from Parliament. As you can see, the body of the late president is already in Parliament, and that will usher in preparations for his body viewing that will be led by President Uhuru Kenyatta. And from what you noticed, quite a solemn ceremony. Even the hummings are sad hummings by the Kenya Defence Forces. Quite a critical point to note that even the people carrying the casket, or the officers carrying the casket, are high-ranking officials in the military as a way of honouring their immediate former commander-in-chief. The East African paper today is describing Kibaki as a gentle giant. Joseph Kaguthi.
It is true. His might, his attitudes, they are very elevated. Even the way he used to conduct, the guru of politics, is going to interpret. You can see his emotional level was very controlled. His mind was fantastic. I remember that time I was in the other side, I was in government, when he went and said, you kanu ni kama mugumo, huwezi kukata na mbembe. Then later he's being told, siwe ulisema kanu haiwezi kuisha, ni kama ni mugumo, huwezi kukata na wembe. Anasema lakini hiyo ni kweli, huwezi kukata mugumo na wembe. You just look at the way it's made very, very light. Very, very, very light. And when they say he's a giant, he is a giant in very many ways. You note, even from the campus at Makerere, first class honors, whether he is in London School of Economics, again, tops. When he comes here, then he gets into the involvement of the state, the building of the young nation, from pre-independence all the way to the first presidency. You remember? Then wakati wa mzee Mwai, one of the things that I saw was very rare. You remember in 1988, he moved from being vice president to being minister for health. You don't see as if anything has happened.
And he graciously does so.
He just moved in. So there is no acrimony, there is nothing. It's the decision of the boss. And he's more or less saying, thank you for having given me that opportunity. Now that you have judged the this. And he ends up being the successor. You see that humility. Just look at Joseph Kaguthi as that loyalty to the boss is critical. So a person like that one, I would ask everybody emulate, whether it is home, whether it is a school, whether it is an institution, any institution. Always listen to the one ahead of you, because there is a reason why they are there. And more so if they are ordained. Yes.
And because we have former Minister Joseph Munyao in studio, and also a member of the Democratic Party, he will be trying to tell us, the Kibaki style of non-confrontational politics and why he adopted that, knowing how abrasive Kenyan politics are. He will be engaging Victor Lo in a bit. We'll be getting to him. But let's go to the early life of President Mwai Kibaki, born of peasants in Gatuyaine, Odaya, grows up like a normal boy, attends, a normal school before, of course, occupying institutions of excellence. How do you think this life of a young Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki, who wants to be a KDF officer, shape his leadership in future? This growing up, how do you think it shaped his leadership?
Let me ask you another question. Who is the grandfather of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta? Or who is the grandfather of Raila Amolo Odinga? Who is the grandfather of, say, Gideon or Kalonzo? The situation was like that in a lot of environments. So he took advantage of the way it was, Hans Boy, and made the best he could under the circumstances. Everybody must be judged from where the environment they grew in. The same with you, the same with everybody else. So the way I see it is that you are telling the young people you can be anything you want to be, provided you try to focus and exploit the environment which is there. Listen to the people you are with. Look at him even as he was growing. Then he goes then to school. He goes to Makerere. The lady Jaramogi Odinga sends Professor Asawa to go persuade him to come and start. All those is, the environment is there for you. Get it. Listen to your elders. There's a reason why the elders in the village were seeing him that way. And he starts now towering. So you cannot say that he wasted time. He grew in the natural manner. And virtually every young person, we should tell the Kenyans, young people, the environment is there for you to grow to what God had purpose for you. Yes,
that's a quite interesting observation, and I hope I will also be here at some point so many years to come, probably bearing the same wealth of experience that you have.
And you'll be the guru of media. Quoting the way you saw this and this and this and this. Yes,
absolutely. We'll cross over to Victor Olo in a bit, but right about now, let's head to Parliament buildings. Our reporter Beatrice Gatonyi is on standby to just give us a feel of what is happening in Parliament ahead of President Uhuru Kenyatta's arrival to lead the nation in the viewing of the late President Mwai Kibaki, a gentle giant, an economist par excellence, and the person you would say set this country on the trajectory of prosperity when he served as president in terms of economic growth. This was the very first time that Kenya's economy was growing by double digits. I don't know, were we ready where we can get to Beatrice Gatonyi now?
Asante sana mwenzangu JJ Kuria kutoka studioni. Hapa ni katika bunge la taifa hapa nchini Kenya, ambapo mwili wa hayati Mwai Kibaki umewasili muda mchache tu uliopita na tayari umelazwa hapa ili kuwapa Wakenya fursa ya kutazama. Kama tujuavyo, Rais Uhuru Kenyatta ataliongoza taifa katika kuomboleza kifo cha hayati Mwai Kibaki ambaye aliaga tarehe 22 mwezi huu. Kwa sasa wakati mwili wake hayati Mwai Kibaki ulipowasili hapa, tayari gwaride lilikuwa limeandaliwa na jeshi la taifa ili kuupokea mwili huo na tayari kuelekeza mahali ambapo Wakenya wataweza kupata fursa hiyo. Kama tujuavyo, tayari Wakenya wameulizwa na kamati ambayo inaandaa mazishi haya, ama wameulizwa kujitokeza kwa wingi ili kuweza kumpa heshima zao za mwisho aliyekuwa rais wa 3 wa taifa hili kuanzia mwaka 2002 hadi mwaka 2013. Kuanzia hivi leo, ama kuanzia wakati ambapo Rais Uhuru Kenyatta ataweza kufika hapa, milango ya jengo hili yataweza kuwa yamefunguliwa kwa Wakenya kuweza kuingia hapa na kutazama mwili kuanzia hadi mwendo wa saa 11 hivi leo. Malango haya yatakuwa yamefunguliwa. Hapo kesho pia Wakenya wanapata fursa hiyo ya kuweza kutazama mwili, na kisha baadaye siku ya Jumatano ndio itakuwa siku ya mwisho kwa Wakenya wote ambao wataweza kufika mahali hapa kuja kutazama mwili, watakuwa wamepewa fursa hiyo. Kama tujuavyo, siku ya Ijumaa imetangazwa kwamba itakuwa ni siku rasmi ya Wakenya kupumzika. Ni siku ambayo imeweza kutolewa kwa Wakenya kupumzika huku wakiendelea kuomboleza kiongozi wa taifa hili ambaye alikuwa ni kiongozi wa 3 wa taifa hili. Na kwa sasa ni Rais Uhuru Kenyatta anasubiriwa kufika hapa muda mfupi kabla saa 4 ama mwendo wa saa 4. Rais Uhuru Kenyatta atakuwa kiwasili katika majengo ya bunge ili kuweza kumpa heshima zake za mwisho aliyekuwa rais wa 3 wa taifa hili. Kwa sasa kile ambacho ninaweza kusema ni kwamba hayati Mwai Kibaki anaheshimika sana, kama tujuavyo, kama kiongozi ambaye aliweza kufufua uchumi wa taifa hili ama kupeleka katika kiwango cha juu zaidi uchumi wa taifa hili. Kiongozi ambaye alionekana kuzingatia sana uendelevu wa muundo msingi na hasa barabara, na vile vile kuinua sekta ya afya na masuala mengine muhimu ambayo bila shaka Wakenya wengi wanazungumzia jinsi ambavyo wanamkumbuka kiongozi huyu ambaye amelala hapa hivi leo. Kwa hivyo kutoka hapa katika maeneo ya bunge ama majengo ya bunge, tayari ni kusema kwamba mwili ushawasili na milango hii itakuwa imefunguliwa wakati wowote baada ya Rais Uhuru Kenyatta kuwasili katika maeneo haya na kuweza kuwaongoza Wakenya katika kuomboleza kiongozi huyu wa tatu wa taifa. Tuko hapa kuhakikisha kwamba tunafuatilia yote ambayo yatakuwa yakiendelea hapa, na tutakuwa tukiwajuza moja baada ya jingine kama jinsi ambavyo mambo yatakuwa yakitokea hapa. Kwa sasa nitakurejesha studioni kwake Victor Olo ili uweze kufuatilia taratibu zote ambazo zitakuwa zikiendelea hapa, na tutakuwa tukirejea moja kwa moja kutoka kwako hapa katika majengo ya bunge. Asante sana na kurejesha huko katika Broadcasting House. Victor Olo kwako.
Thank you so much, Beatrice Gatonye there live from Parliament buildings. Of course, the military is already taking charge of that exercise all the way from Lee Funeral Home, and now the body is set to lie in state for the next 3 days at Parliament buildings. And what is happening is that President Uhuru Kenyatta will be arriving there at around 10 a.m. also to lead the nation in mourning the death of former President Mwai Kibaki. And of course, John Kuria will be with me in studio later on with the big man himself, Joseph Kaguthi, also as we talk about the issues to do with the late President Mwai Kibaki. But right now with me here, I have got the veteran, Joseph Munyao, who is a former minister and a patron of Democratic Party, that is DP, where the late president was also a member of the same party. Just to get his voice, let me welcome you to studio. Bwana Munyao, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Fine, thank you. And good to have you on the show.
Asante sana for inviting me.
Yes. We have got Joseph Kaguthi in studio, and he's talked a lot of things concerning, oh, there you have him, long-time friends.
Yeah.
Apart from talking about the president, the late President Mwai Kibaki, you have lost a personal friend.
Very true. I've really lost a good friend, clean friend, and my associate, whom I have worked with for quite some time. Because my first time to meet Honorable Mwai Kibaki was way back in 1975.
1975.
When I was elected on a by-election.
Yes.
And from that time, from the time I met him, he was still a senior minister. Could not go close, whatever, but we related probably well, and we grew fairly well out to the time. Yeah.
It must be so hard for you to eulogize the late president.
For sure, it's very difficult. It's not very easy to really talk about Mwai Kibaki, because as you talk, you still have got the emotions of what has happened. Because the time we have lived with him, the time, and all the things we have really done with him are quite a number.
Yes. He was a member of the Democratic Party.
He was a member of the Democratic Party. In fact, we started the party together.
You are the founders of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, we are the founders of.
How did it come about?
Myself, John Keane.
Yes.
Wamunga, Honorable Karume, and yeah, all that, Charlie Mwendo. We are the people who started the Democratic Party of Kenya, and that was, in fact, it was officially given the document in 1992. That is immediately after removal of Section 2A.
Yes, the repeal of Section 2A.
Yeah,
yes.
That's when we got that certificate. Otherwise, we had started earlier, way back in 1987. That's when we used to meet occasionally, daytime, evening, talking about the freedom of this country. And you remember at one time, during that time, there was one time when an American representing this organization called NDI.
Yes.
Came to the airport, and he was asked by the immigration officers, "Hey, where are you going?" Said, "I'm coming to Kenya." "Who are you?" Said, "I'm a director of NDI." "What are you coming for?" "Well, I'm coming to spread democracy to this country. You need democracy." Because we had been a one-party system all through.
Yes.
And this man was told, well, come on, you go back, because that is not to be spread here. He went back, he was not allowed to come in. So what happened in 1992, immediately we got the certificate, that around March, April. Myself and Kibaki, we left here to Washington, and we went to the offices of NDI and told them, look, you are now welcome to Kenya, because we are a democratic country, because we, Democratic Party, are registered a party to democratize democracy in the country. And that's the time we started opening democracy in this country.
Yes, and during that session, when Section 2A was repealed, how was it all about in terms of having our democracy? But before you answer that, let me just take you through the program. It's it's a military affair, and of course that the casket carrying the remains of former president, the late Mwai Kibaki, is also draped in a national flag. The same happened to former president. We also remember when President Mwai died, the same thing happened. And of course, there were motorbikes that accompanied the carriage and the military convoy all the way from Lee Funeral Home to Parliament buildings. That is also happening to President Mwai Kibaki. And of course, it was wheeled by that casket carriage, by a carriage, as it also happened to Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. That is exclusively a military affair, as has been explained by Joseph Kagode. And constitutionally, there are particular people who are accorded that state funeral. I will give you the names of those people who have been accorded state funeral in this particular country. But back to you. During that point of the repeal of Section 2A, Kenya was a one-party state, and here we are. We had our democracy. People would go about, the mlolongo size kind of election. Give me the picture when now DP was originally formed as a national party.
Yeah, from that time, like I said, from that time when immediately we were now certified as a party and given the freedom to go around spreading democracy and freedom in the country. We continued very well in 1992, and you can see at that time we were the second oldest party in Kenya, because at that time there was only KANU. Then DP came up in 1992, and then several other parties started coming in, started being registered. And at that time, when we were forming DP, we had in mind that Kenya will be over 2 or 3 parties, like it is happening in the US, UK, and all that, strong parties which can guide the country. But somehow, whatever happened, Mwai was able to even create other parties and even sponsor them. To the extent that at one time we found we were over 60 parties at that time. But we worked very well. We continued spreading democracy. We continued spreading freedom so that each Kenyan would be free and be able to participate in whatever we're doing. And that is why, in fact, from that time, you can see what is happening after, because in 1992 and then 1997, we went for elections, we lost, but we still continued building democracy and until we took over government in 2002. And that is the time we took over the government after, well, there were so many parties. Now we had to come together, coalesce with several other parties, and then that is the time we called ourselves NAC. We came into power in 2002 as a coalition calling NAC. We continued 2007, you remember it changed, because that time we now came in as a PNU by coalescing with several other parties.
One funny thing is that almost all of the politicians we have were students of KANU, including Kibaki himself, including you. You're all KANU members.
The only difference The only difference is that although I was a member in Kano ticket, but I had never become a member of Kano. Like now,
so I'm still a member of Kano, technically speaking. I'm
a life member of the Democratic Party.
Right. Yes.
But when I in Kano at that time, I never even had that certificate. But I belonged to the group because you had to bring there because there was no other. There was no other life. There was no other way you could exist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joseph Kaguthi in studio. At one point, did you ever interact with him? He was a tough man way back then.
Oh yeah, and he's a man who had been praying for us even at that time.
You're right.
He prayed and got us where we were spiritually. Yeah, and he knows that.
He knows that.
He knows that.
I can see him nodding on the other side of the studio.
He knows that.
All right. You know, let's come to 2002. When now campaigns were at its fever peak and, you know, coalition of parties were coming up. And President Mwai Kibaki that evening was announced that got an accident. And then Raila said, Captain ameumia. Nobody expected whatever happened in 2002. Give me a picture before that particular evening when you're from a campaign, they were from Kitui, the side of Ukambani, and you got a news that President Kibaki got injured?
In fact, I got that news. I was in Boni at that time, in Kalawa, to be specific. And by that afternoon, when I got information that Kibaki, something has happened, it was about 6 o'clock in the evening. I had to drive all the way from Kalawa to the Machakos turnoff.
That is in Boni.
From Boni, I drove all the way to Machakos turnoff, where this accident had happened at that time. And at that time, although I was arriving there about 7 or so, there were still crowds of people who had got the information. They were all coming to check on what was happening. When we got there, we found that the body had been driven to Nairobi Hospital. And then, like you say, that's the time Honorable Raila joined him.
Yes.
I don't know whether they were in the same car or a different car, but they drove Honorable Kibaki to Nairobi Hospital. And he started taking care. Yeah.
It was one
and
of
it was a very big concern.
It was.
Yeah, very big concern.
Right. You know, at that particular point, everything was of state concern because they were fighting to remove the late President Mwai, yes, out of power. And here you have one of your strong member of the party getting injured. That was a great concern even to the DP party.
It was a big dent to us. But one of the good things is that politicians now at that time, they showed that differences don't exist, but not all the time.
Absolutely.
Because at that time, can you imagine, we were all fighting differently.
Yes.
But when Raila got the information, he drove all the way to Machakos to escort his friend back to Nairobi Hospital, and he expressed a lot of concern. And it is from that time when the emotions of Kibaki Tosha started developing.
Yes, Kibaki Tosha. I'll come back to that later on. But Kibaki himself as a person, how do you describe it? It must be so hard for you to talk about.
Very difficult. You cannot really describe what Kibaki, because Kibaki was everything, and he was an achiever. He was a very good man socially. As a person, as a friend, he was a good friend. You could discuss anything, any topic with Kibaki, and he was easy to access.
People said that he was a genius.
Wow. Number one, he was a real genius.
Yes.
And he was able to tackle whatever topic you bring in there.
Paint for me a scenario where you, as a party, you are sitting at a boardroom discussing party politics and national politics, so to say. Paint for me a picture how he would handle himself as a leader.
No, one thing Kibaki used to give you, when you are in a conference or a meeting, he used to give you enough time for you to express whatever. He would ask you some questions, but he would want you to come very clear in whatever he's asking. And he gives you a lot of freedom. Yeah.
Okay. Allow me to ask this question, probably, Jacob. to Joseph Kagudi in studio. Somebody's asking here that why is it that President Mwai Kibaki will be buried in Othaya? At the same time, President Moi was also buried in Kabarak, but the founding president was buried next to parliament buildings. Is there any protocol issue, or how was it way back then? Perhaps Joseph Kagudi to answer that.
All right, you should go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh,
yes. The question is, somebody is asking, why is President Mwai Kibaki will be buried in Othaya? President Moi was buried in in Kabarak, but the founding president was buried next to Parliament. Why so?
The word you have used, founding father, founding president, is a very important thing. Go to most of these countries, you'll get there is a father of that nation, and that father of the nation is accorded a lot of respect.
Yeah.
It is as in the Constitution of 210.
Yes, maybe just speak to the camera. Yes.
Using the one aspect of the Kenya Museum. You know, the Kenya Museum, National Museum, does not promote. Kenya Museum, National Museum, does not follow national history. It follows natural history. The oldest, the bones, I don't know what, that is the way they do it. And that is why, if you look at us as a country, we are so divided, because they will go, this spear is a Maasai, this was a Kikuyu, this was this and this. It is the key word here is the founding father of the nation.
Yes.
Any country which does not recognize that, it loses in terms of the heroism. We need to create heroes so that our young people, they have certain quotable quotes. Like if you look at Mzee Kibaki now, you can go on a litany of quotable quotes, and each one of them has a very heavy meaning, and it's a foundation. Remember I said he is accorded this respect because of the sacrifice he has done and the inspiration. The inspiration comes from those heroes of that level. Hence, that difference. We need that even when we change the currency.
Yes.
I am one of those who said, God, shall we be forgiven by the future generations? And in fact, now, I would like the next government to change the policy of the Kenya National Museum, Kenya National Archives, so that we now follow national history. I don't want to see, when I arrive at the Kenya Museum, because it's a museum, the thing I first see there is a big elephant. I see in my currency big elephant. The elephant is here in Kruger National Park, in India, in the other one. What are we promoting there? Let's get Mzee Munyao. If they cannot get the Kapenguria 6 there.
Absolutely. And you see, Curia, when President Moi died, it was a beehive of activity. And in fact, most people never expected that. The military drove its way all the way from Lee Funeral Home, and they marched one by one from Lee Funeral Home to Nyayo National Stadium. We covered that function. Perhaps for those people who did not watch it, just paint a picture what we should expect on Friday.
It is generally just a repeat of the same, because we are dealing with the same situation. In February of 2020, we were dealing with the former President Daniel R.I.P. Moi, a retired president. We are also dealing now with President Mwai Kibaki, a retired president. So obviously the military protocols will be nearly the same for both President Daniel R.I.P. Moi and President Mwai Kibaki. But quite an interesting question you asked, because as you talk about the place of burial for the president, there's a near push now happening, and probably you will hear it in the coming days, of not burying the president in Othaya, but bury him at the Heroes Corner in Uhuru Park. And the Daily Nation has carried that story today, of a push now not to take the president to Othaya, but have him buried at the Heroes Corner in Uhuru Park. And probably Joseph Kagudi will pick that in a bit. But a question for Minister Joseph Munyao.
Yes.
the current generation that we're dealing with in terms of politics, the president was non-confrontational when it comes to issues of politicking and dealing with his opponents. You cannot compare that time to now. What lessons can the young generation or the current crop of leaders take from President Kibaki, Minister Munyao?
Well, this is why there is all the time a write-up, booklets to be followed, because they have got to follow what their leaders have done in the past. And in any case, now when you live as a leader, you live so that you may also create others to follow your habit and your reactions. Now, Honorable Kibaki did the best, and that is why we have been thinking that even the growing up will now imitate his behavior and whatever, react like he was acting all the time. Kibaki lived very well, comfortably, peacefully, and that is what we need as a country.
And even after retiring from presidency, he lived a very low life.
Very low life.
He was never commenting on any national politics.
No way.
Yes.
No way.
And that was him.
That was him. And that is why even the leaders today, not even the leaders today who are whatever, that's why every time they are talking about, we want Kibaki lived the best life.
Yes.
Kibaki did the best for this country. He stabilized the economy. He stabilized everything. This is why we have got to follow, all of us. Yeah. And this is why it's a repeat to anybody, not even.
Absolutely. That reminds me of during the Grand Coalition government, when they had the so-called the 50-50 sharing of the government with the Honorable Raila Odinga. When Raila Odinga was more combative, Honorable Mwai Kibaki would take a backseat. He would never comment.
All the time. Raila would come very hot with all the issues, but Kibaki would all cool him down in whatever. In any case, you could come with whatever you are now saying, and Kibaki ignores all that. And he would cool all that so that he gets whatever, and that's how he was achieving whatever he was achieving.
Yeah.
Because he was achieving this because he had all the time to cool and to continue, take his way. He has a special route.
A special way to do his things. Okay. Curia?
Absolutely. Quite interesting when Minister Munyao talks about the president being deliberate, because when you look at his style of handling his opponents or even his critics, it was very deliberate in terms of how he dealt with them. And sometimes it appeared like the president knew silence is also a weapon, because he would make noise and haggle a lot, but then he will not even respond. So the heat will just die down naturally, and that was, President Mwai Kibaki for you. And a little bit of correction, because I said about Uhuru Park, I'm talking about Uhuru Gardens.
Right.
There's a bit of mismatch there. Yes. It is Uhuru Gardens where the proposal, of burying President Kibaki is coming to. Probably before we get back to you, Victor and Minister Munyao, it's important to hear from a former administrator, Peter Kagudi. What does that Joseph Kagodi, what does that proposal mean? That, don't take the president to Odai. Let's put him at Uhuru Garden. It's a hero's corner. And that place is looking wonderful right now.
You are now, what you are saying, or that thought, is the same I'm mentioning about the National Museum. Bring nationhood through heroes and heroines of this republic, so that the young ones have people to emulate. If you look at each one of the leaders, Mzee Munyao was my minister when I was in the field.
Yes.
The thing here is that our young people need people they can emulate. You go there and ask yourself, hii philosophy ya kutojibu inatoka wapi? If you go now to the Agikuyu, they say kuhotana kwa jabani kukila. Somebody who is already very strong is a giant. Hata akitupiwa, even if watoto wanatupia small stones, he just walks. If you look at the way Kibaki was, he didn't bother about small things. His skin was thick. That's why he was saying, wacha waseme. Because that's why you are a leader. Who else do they talk about if they don't talk about their president, their president? And if you look at, because of that, he opened the airwaves, he opened the freedom of everybody. Our problem now is how we establish the boundaries, so that again we don't ban the country or destroy our young people because of the amount of freedom which is exceeding, and without knowing that your freedom has a boundary between you and the other one. Right. So those are the things. Now you are talking about changing to burying at
from Odaya to Uhuru Garden.
This is a good country. If they put now, because those ones have already been buried, and the people of Odaya, people of Nakuru, unfortunately, Kabrak is not in the center of the carriage in where the young people would still keep on getting. But if you want to bring it to the country, I have no problem coming here, so that we now start nationhood through the pronouncements. We stop quoting those leaders of other countries. We quote our own. We alisema hivi. We alisema hivi. Did you know that Mzee Kibaki never mentioned Mwai kwa krism yake? No. Mzee Munyawa atakwambia even yao waachana na hiyo, fanyeni yenu.
Quite interesting.
This time is attack on the person, attack on the families of the heads of state. That's why I mentioned about Uka's grandparents of the ones who are competing now. So why are we going to the family level?
All right, quite an interesting question you asked, but of course from the pictures you see in Parliament as dignitaries continue to arrive. Interestingly, Victor, we will not be able to tell out who is who until they descend from the vehicles, because none is flying the flag today. So you will not be able to know whether it's an ambassador or minister, because the Kenyan flag is not going to be flying on the motorcade. But as we proceed, Victor, it's quite interesting. I would want to, and probably we'll pose this question to Minister Munyao.
Yes.
When they sat in cabinet and there was a lot of pressure from the public, the president needs to respond to this or respond to that, and probably as ministers they were sitting there wondering, why is the president not talking? How did they feel, and what was his demeanor as president in those cabinet meetings when there's a lot of pressure on him to respond to something?
But Bwana Kibaki never used to access to issues because they have been said. He had his own way, and his own approach to whatever you say. You may keep on talking whatever you may say, but he has got his own way of cooling you down. Even in cabinet, you can start talking, giving ideas, all that, but he has got his own way, and you will all the time follow that.
That would easily annoy your opponent, because you can imagine you're speaking something to annoy your opponent.
But that is the only way, that is the best way of controlling. That we will talk, and I know that I achieve my way.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is exactly what Honorable Kibaki used to do.
Absolutely.
He will let you speak what you are now saying, and then finally say, yeah.
Okay.
And he used to achieve what his plan is, and what is his intention.
Right.
In fact, that's how he used to achieve.
That's how he used to. Because, remember when again, that happened when Raila Odinga was the Prime Minister. But one thing that us journalists were looking towards at any given function was his witty moment. Wacha hiyo kitu ikae hapo. We can. It's in the public gallery.
In fact,
he was a funny man.
In fact, Kibaki achieved a lot, and in fact, he was the only one who could control and manage Raila.
Yes.
Because Raila would be let free to talk whatever he is talking about. But we show he now lines out to whatever, because Kibaki would list it all this by friend and say, watch out, and that is what he used to achieve.
You know, that reminds me during the signing of that grand coalition at the footsteps of Harambee House. Remember when the country was almost split right in the middle?
Right.
And, you know, we had got eminent personnel of the African continent. We had Kofi Annan there.
Yeah.
We had got former president of Tanzania. We had got even local leaders who were trying to mediate during that time of grand coalition. But the last-minute conversation that President Mwai Kibaki and Ambassador Mudaura then had saved this particular nation from burning further. In fact, some people were adamant that Raila was going to get a third of the government, but Honorable Kibaki was okay with 50-50.
Yeah. It was even if he got 40-60, Kibaki knew that he was still be the president and he will be controlling his policies work, and truly they worked. Yeah.
Allow me to ask this question. Most people say that President Mwai Kibaki was ready to go home after that election in 2007. Was he ready to go home to retire?
Well, I also understand, I also have heard what you are now saying, but the commitment of Kibaki is that he wanted the truth in this country, and he was standing and working for the truth. And at that time when the public took this different stand, no, he was okay. And I think it was quite okay that he took the stand he took. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let me give you a bit of some of the protocol that will be followed here. Now, President Mwai Kibaki will be accorded a 19-gun salute, just the same way Moi was also accorded the same. Reason being, they died while out of office. Only members of the state who die in office get a 21-gun salute. And of course, it's only President Kenyatta, the late Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, who got a 21-gun salute, and because he died while he was in office, and he lay in state for 10 days, not 3 days, and the mourning period lasted for a month. Now that is a complete departure from what you've seen with President, the late President Moi, and now President Mwai Kibaki, who will get a 19-gun salute, the same way Moi got the same, and the mourning period will be 3 days, unlike President Kenyatta, who got 10 days lying in state. At the same time, the mourning period lasted for a month. Kioria, you know what happens as journalists during coverage of any event of Mwai Kibaki? As journalists, we always had almost a meter proximity with the president. He was free with almost everyone.
That's true.
Yes.
In terms of the proximity between journalists and President Kibaki, but you will also remember the dynamics of security then were not as complicated as they are today.
Absolutely.
Because the threat against the Republic of Kenya continues to increase, obviously because of the instability. Our neighbors to Somalia. Generally, right now, you cannot expose the president to some of the things that were happening then. But there's something very interesting he's saying about President Kibaki's wit. Let me tell you, one of the most difficult jobs then as a journalist was to actually interpret the president's off-cuff remarks. And forever,
it was hard to package that story,
in his off-cuff remarks.
Yes.
That is where the story was. It was not in his speech. The story was in his off-the-cuff remarks. But then his off-cuff remarks were, such things like, and that was his classic response. But trust me, the story would be in his off-cuff remarks.
And actually people would say that's where the story was.
Yeah. And unlike President Uhuru Kenyatta, in many times, President Uhuru Kenyatta, whatever his message is, he actually ensures it is put in his speech.
Yes.
He's very astute in terms of ensuring that his message is well captured in his speeches. His off-cuff remarks only last for about like 2 minutes, and then he's done and he says, "Mungu awabariki sana," and he sits down. For the President Kibaki, he will finish his speech and then go to his off-cuff remarks, and then you're wondering, what is this man saying? all of a sudden you realize, in that thing when he was saying
that's where the story is.
That's what the story was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, as you can see on your screen there, the activity is still happening in Parliament. It's a full military affair, and of course we have got high-level security because we expect President Mwai Kibaki to lead the nation in marking this particular day, and members of the public will also be given an opportunity to pay their last respect to the former president, the late Mwai Kibaki, in Parliament. That will happen until late in the evening, when the body will be ferried back to Lee Funeral Home and then will be taken back to Parliament again tomorrow in the morning. So if you have got time, please, you can make your way to Parliament buildings. It will be open to the public. Now, let me tell you this, apart from President Mwai Kibaki, there are only particular people who are accorded state funeral. And in Kenya, apart from President, the late Kenyatta, only 4 people have been given the same. That is the Vice President, that is Kijana Wamalwa. We also know Nobel Peace Laureate Wangari Maathai, who was accorded state funeral. Then former Nyeri Governor Wahome Gakuru was also accorded that state funeral, and also President Mwai was also given that, as well as First Lady, former First Lady, that is Lucy Kibaki. So there are people who can be accorded that state funeral, and of course the only officials who are entitled to a state funeral and to lie in state are President, a former President, and a president-elect, and any other person designated by the president. So that is how it happens in terms of that is there. So those are live pictures from Parliament buildings.
All right, fantastic job, Victor, from that other side. And quite interesting, the departure from, a state funeral, and how the difference obviously is the military presence, because in some of these people who've been accorded state funerals, the military presence was not as pronounced as is with the former presidents. And we'll be coming back again to continue analyzing the situation as is. But let me take you to Parliament, where Beatrice Gatonye and Timothy Kipnusu have linked up now to tell us what the situation there. It's 20 minutes past 8 o'clock, and like I said, this event is a military event, so the precision is quite serious. By 9 o'clock, we expect President Uhuru Kenyatta to be in Parliament, and you already know that the order was that every dignitary who wants to be in today's event should be in Parliament by 9, because after 9, only President Uhuru Kenyatta will make his way there and then lead the nation in mourning the third president of the Republic of Kenya, Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. Right about now, Beatrice Gatonye, Timothy Kipnusu, if you can hear me, take it away.
Asante sana mwenzangu John Jacob Kuria hapo studioni. Niko hapa katika majengo ya bunge ambapo mwili wa hayati Mwai Kibaki tayari ulishawasili, na kile ambacho kinaendelea kwa sasa, jeshi limechukua usukani katika eneo hili. Majengo haya yanalindwa na jeshi kabisa. Na cha muhimu ni kwamba tayari mwili huo uko hapa. Rais Uhuru Kenyatta anatarajiwa baada ya saa 1:30 hivi, mwendo wa saa 4 atakuwa kiwasili katika majengo haya ili kuja kuwaongoza Wakenya katika kutoa heshima zao za mwisho kwa hayati Mwai Kibaki. Mwili huu uliweza kuondoka katika makafani ya Lee mwendo wa asubuhi saa 1, na kutueleza kidogo kuhusiana na jinsi ambavyo mwili huo ulivyoondoka katika makafani hayo, nina mwenzangu hapa Timothy Kipnusu, ambaye atakuwa kitueleza jinsi ambavyo ameona, na labda ukilinganisha na wakati wa mazishi ya hayati Daniel Arap Moi na sasa, kulingana na jinsi ambavyo Wakenya wamejitokeza, unaona utofauti upi?
Mwenzangu Beatrice, ukilinganisha na wakati ambapo mwili wa mwenda zake rais mstaafu Moi ulipoondoka katika ile chumba cha kuhifadhia maiti cha Lee, ni tofauti kidogo, manake hakukuwa na ile mihamko zaidi, tofauti na wakati ambapo Moi alikuwa mwili wake unakuja katika majengo ya bunge. Watu walikuwa pembeni ndio, lakini tulipokuwa tunaondoka alipoondoka katika ile chumba cha kuhifadhia maiti, tuliona kwamba hata kando kando pembeni hatukuona watu wengi zaidi, lakini tunataraji kwamba pindi tu Rais Uhuru Kenyatta atakapoongoza taifa katika kutizama mwili wake mwendo wa saa 4 hivi, basi watu watakuwa wanajaa pomoni, manake yeye ndiye atakuwa anaongoza kuweza kutizama mwili huo, na kisha umati wa watu watakuwa wanafurika hapa tayari kuweza kuwapatia kumpa heshima za mwisho mwenda zake Rais Mwai Emilio Kibaki hayati.
Kama tujuavyo, Wakenya mnahimizwa ama Wakenya wanahimizwa kujitokeza kwa wingi ili kutazama na kutoa heshima zao kwa kiongozi huyu ambaye anakumbukwa bila shaka kwa mengi kuanzia hivi leo hadi mwendo wa siku ya Jumatano. Kipi ambacho kinakumbukwa zaidi unapozungumza na Wakenya kuhusiana na hayati Mwai Kibaki? Kipi ambacho kinajitokeza zaidi?
Mwenzangu, Mwai Emilio Kibaki atakumbukwa kama rais ambaye aliweza kuikwamua taifa hili kutoka lindi la umaskini, na unafahamu fika kwamba alipochukua hatamu za uongozi uchumi uliweza kuimarika kwa 7.7%. Kwa hivyo Wakenya wanamkumbuka kama rais ambaye alizingatia zaidi ukuaji wa uchumi na kuhakikisha kwamba Kenya inaafiki maendeleo katika sekta mbalimbali, na zaidi ya yote ni vile vile atakumbukwa kama rais ambaye aliweza kuhakikisha kwamba katiba ya taifa hili inapatikana wakati ambapo kulikuwa kunaidhinishwa katiba mwaka 2010. Yeye ndiye alikuwa mamlakani. Kwa hivyo anakumbukwa zaidi kwamba Kenya ilikuwa inafurahia kuwepo kwa katiba mpya ambayo kwa sasa tunafurahia kwa sasa.
Mwenzangu Kipnusu, nadhani pia tunapozungumza kuhusu hayati Mwai Kibaki hatuwezi kusahau kwamba ni wakati wake ama wakati wa uongozi wake ambapo elimu ya bure iliweza kuwafikia watoto wa Kenya, na wazazi wengi wanajivunia sana wanaposikia kwamba ama wamehuzunika zaidi kusikia kwamba kuhusu kifo chake, na mengi ambayo pia tunakumbuka ni kuhusiana na elimu ya bure. Wazazi wengi wa Kenya ambao hawakuwa wana uwezo wa kuwasomesha watoto wao, kitu ambacho kilichangia sana watoto wengi kutoenda shuleni. Na sasa hivi tunaweza zungumza mtoto wa Turkana, mtoto wa Baringo, mtoto wa Kwale, Pwani, wapi, anaweza kufika shuleni, keti darasani kama mtoto wa Nairobi, kama mtoto wa Eldoret, na kufika shuleni na kusoma bila wasiwasi.
Bila shaka.
Kwa hivyo tutamkumbuka pia kiongozi huyo wa taifa kama kiongozi ambaye alileta elimu ya bure, elimu ya primary
baada ya kuchukua hatamu kutoka kwa Rais Mwai ambaye alikuwa amechangamkia vile vile elimu.
Kando na hayo, mwenzangu Kipnusu, tunapozungumzia upanuaji wa barabara hapa nchini Kenya, infrastructure ama tunazungumzia muundo msingi wa barabara, anakumbukwa sana kama kiongozi ambaye aliendeleza na kukuza barabara za humu nchini maeneo mengi, hususan hapa jijini Nairobi. Unapozungumza na wana Nairobi wanakuambia tunakumbuka Kibaki alitutengenezea Thika Road.
Naam, bila shaka.
Ambalo ni jambo ambalo kiongozi wa sasa ambaye ndiye Uhuru Kenyatta pia alichukulia kwa uzito mkubwa na kuendeleza ukuaji ama kuendeleza muundo msingi wa barabara hapa nchini Kenya. Mengine
pengine vile vile anaweza kukumbukwa kama rais ambaye hajakuwa katika mstari wa mbele kuzungumza hadharani kinagaubaga, wakati ambapo pengine wandani au wale wapinzani wake na wale ambao wanamkosoa serikalini hajakuwa akijitokeza waziwazi kujibu watu. Yeye alikuwa mnyamavu zaidi. Ni rais ambaye alikuwa anazingatia sana kutekeleza kazi zake na kando na kuchapa siasa au kuwajibu wale wapinzani wake ambao watamkosoa kutokana na mambo moja au nyingine. Lakini vile vile mwenzangu Beatrice, hayati Mwai Kibaki atakumbukwa kama rais ambaye tofauti na marais wengine, mwanzilishi wa taifa hili hayati Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, hayati Daniel Arap Moi, yeye na vile vile Rais Uhuru Kenyatta, yeye katika zoezi lolote la gwaride la heshima, yeye hakuwa anavalia magwanda ya polisi. Yeye alikuwa anavalia tusuti nadhifu na alikuwa anakuja pale, lakini hao wengine walikuwa wanavalia magwanda hayo ya vikosi vya ulinzi. Kwa hivyo tunamkumbuka kama kidogo alikuwa na uongozi tofauti kwa kulinganishwa na wale wengine.
Na bila shaka pia ni kiongozi ambaye baada ya kustaafu alitulia. Hatukumuona hadharani kwa muda mwingi. Labda kama kungekuwepo tu na shughuli muhimu ya kitaifa, lakini ni kiongozi ambaye baada ya kustaafu Emilio Mwai Kibaki alienda zake kutulia nyumbani bila kujihusisha sana sana na mambo mengi ambayo yalikuwa yanatokea hapa nchini Kenya. Kwa hivyo pia labda tuseme kwamba alipotulia, sijui Wakenya nao wakawa wanamsahau kidogo au vipi?
Na vile 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 unavyozungumza kuhusiana na wakati ambapo alistaafu na kutokuwa katika ile kuonekana hadharani kwenye mikutano tofauti, jambo ambalo lilikuwa la kushangaza ni kwamba rais mwenda zake alikuwa kidogo katika harakati zake za kutekeleza wajibu wake alikuwa mcheshi sana na kando na hotuba yake ambayo anaisoma mara nyingi watu wanasubiria wakati ambapo atakuwa anazungumza kando na hotuba ambayo alikuwa amepangiwa. Wakati mwingi lazima watu wangeweza kuachwa vinywa wazi au kuweza kufurahia hotuba ya mwenda zake mwenzangu.
Na ni kweli wakati ambapo kifo chake kilitangazwa tarehe 22 mwezi Aprili, katika mitandao ya kijamii nadhani watu walikuwa wameweka video nyingi fupi hasa za ujumbe wake ambao ulikuwa ndio mwisho wa hotuba yake rasmi, wakati kama jinsi ambavyo unasema alipokuwa kimaliza kusoma, yani watu walikuwa wanaketi sasa wanasubiri sasa wacha azungumze tusikie leo kuna yapi. Na ni kiongozi ambaye nadhani katika wakati wa uongozi wake kulikuwa na ule uhuru wa kujieleza kwa watu wengi. Hata wanahabari walikuwa na ule uhuru wa kujieleza hata zaidi. Kwa hivyo pia ni kipindi ambacho kitakumbuka kama kipindi ambacho kilileta freedom of speech sana, kwa sababu pia yeye mwenyewe alikuwa na hiyo freedom of speech, lakini akizungumza hata watu wamecheka na hakuwa na uzito wa kusema mambo makubwa hata mambo madogo mbele ya Wakenya.
Na bila shaka Beatrice, itakuwa ni wito kwa wale viongozi ambao tayari wanapania kuwania viti mbalimbali, ikizingatia kwamba imesalia kama chini ya miezi mitatu wa Kenya kujitosa debeni kubaini mbivu na mbichi, waweze kuiga mfano wa rais huyu mstaafu Mwai Kibaki, kwamba yeye ni kuzungumzia sera, kuzungumzia masuala ambayo yanamhusu Mkenya, sio kuwa na ile matamshi ya chuki au kurushiana matusi hadharani. Inakuwa ni kwamba tunazingatia ni nini hasa ambacho tunaweza mfanyia mwananchi wa kawaida, hasa tunapotafuta nyadhifa mbalimbali uongozini. Kwa hivyo ni wakati ambapo tunamwomboleza, wakati ambapo tunasubiri wa Kenya kuweza kumpa heshima za mwisho, itakuwa vema zaidi wale wanasiasa kuiga mfano wake, kwamba siasa iwe ni safi, siasa iwe ni inazingatia sera na sio matusi.
Na ni kweli kabisa mwenzangu, wakati ambapo tunamwomboleza kiongozi huyu, muda tu baada ya miezi kadhaa tutakuwa tukienda debeni kuwachagua viongozi. Nadhani kama jinsi ambavyo unasema, cha muhimu ni viongozi kuzingatia ama kuiga mfano wake hayati Mwai Kibaki, ambaye alizingatia sana masuala yaliyohusiana na Wakenya. Tuone viongozi ambao watakuja na sera ambazo zitamfaidi Mkenya, kama jinsi ambavyo tunamkumbuka yeye kwa kuleta elimu ya bure. Je, wewe kiongozi ambaye utakuja kuingia uongozini, ni kipi ambacho umewaandalia Wakenya? Ni kipi ambacho ungependa kimguze mwananchi yule wa kawaida? Ni sera zipi ambazo unakuja nazo ambazo zitakuwa zinamfaidi yule Mkenya, na si wewe kama mtu binafsi ama wewe kama mwanasiasa? Hivyo basi ni wakati ambapo pia kama wananchi wa Kenya wachukue muda huu kuzingatia kwamba wachague viongozi kama hayati Mwai Kibaki ambaye ameondoka, kiongozi ambaye mwachague viongozi ambao watawaletea mafanikio na faida ambazo nyinyi kama Wakenya mnazitaka. Kama mnataka kuondolewa katika umaskini, chagua kiongozi ambaye atakuondoa kwenye umaskini. Kwa hivyo ni wakati ambao pia ni wa kufikiria zaidi, na ni wakati ambao pia Wakenya wanastahili kuchukua nafasi hii, kwa sababu kutoka leo wako hapa kuja, wakati ambapo unafika hapa kutazama huo mwili, kumbuka pia ungependa kuwa na kiongozi kama huyu. Na cha muhimu zaidi ni viongozi ama wito kwa viongozi ambao wanawania nyadhifa mbalimbali za uongozi, wauige mfano wa Mwai Kibaki ili waweze kukumbukwa kama jinsi ambavyo tunasimama hapa leo na kuhesabu mambo kadha wa kadha ambayo tunayakumbuka aliyoyafanyia taifa hili.
Naam, bila shaka kama ulivyodokeza, ni vema zaidi wale wawaniaji tofauti waweze kuzingatia yale ambayo vile vile rais mstaafu aliweza kuzingatia. Na pia unavyozungumza kuhusiana na masuala ya maendeleo, taifa hili kwa sasa tunaangazia zaidi kuweza kuikwamua taifa kutoka katika hali ya umaskini, hasa uchumi ambao umezungumziwa zaidi na wale ambao wanawania viti vya rais, kwamba tunataraji kwamba tutaweza kuhakikisha kwamba tunabadilisha uchumi na kuhakikisha kwamba Kenya inaafiki masuala, inaafiki yale mahitaji ambayo inamkumba Mkenya. Na wakati huu ambapo tunasubiri rais Rais Uhuru Kenyatta aweze kuongoza taifa kufika hapa katika kumomboleza rais mstaafu mwenda zake hayati mwenda zake rais mstaafu Mwai Kibaki. Basi tutakuwa hapa kuweza kuhakikisha kwamba unapata picha ya moja kwa moja atakapokuwa anawasili kiongozi wa taifa. Bila shaka kama tulivyodokeza hapo awali, atakuwa anaweza kulakiwa na wale viongozi au mabunge, viongozi kutoka maspika kutoka mabunge mawili ya bunge la seneti na bunge la kitaifa. Cha muhimu vile vile Gatonye ni kwamba rais mstaafu anapoombolezwa hii leo na Wakenya kupata fursa ya kuweza kutizama, Wakenya vile vile watakuwa wanakumbwa na hali ya mshike katika usafiri, manake barabara nyingi zimeweza kufungwa na ili kuhakikisha kwamba wanafika hapa ili kutizama mwili. Manake tulipokuwa katika ile chumba cha kuhifadhia maiti, kulikuwa na ile msafara unapowasili, kuna wale ambao walikuwa wana taraji kufika kazini, na tulikuwa nazungumza nao kabla tufike, wakasema kwamba wameweza kuchelewa. Gatonye.
Asante mtazamaji, tunazungumza tukiwa katika mabunge ama majengo ya bunge hapa jijini Nairobi, ambapo mwili wa hayati Mwai Kibaki uko hapa tayari kutazamwa na Wakenya. Na kama jinsi ambavyo tumekuwa tukikueleza ni kwamba Rais Uhuru Kenyatta anatarajiwa kufika hapa mwendo wa saa 4, ambapo atakuwa akiwaongoza Wakenya kutoa heshima zao za mwisho kwa hayati Mwai Kibaki kutoka hivi leo siku ya Jumatatu. Kesho pia itakuwa vile vile. Wewe Mkenya una fursa ya kufika hapa katika majengo ya bunge kutazama mwili huo, na siku ya Jumatano itakuwa ndio siku ya mwisho ya kutazama mwili huo. Na mtazamaji, kama jinsi ambavyo unatazama picha ambayo utakuwa ukipewa na mpiga picha wetu, huyu ni mwanawe Mwai Kibaki, ama tuseme familia ya hayati Mwai Kibaki tayari imewasili. Ndio hao tayari sasa wanaingia katika majengo ya bunge ili kuweza kuwa pamoja na kushirikiana pamoja na viongozi wa taifa na Wakenya kwa jumla kwa ajili ya kuweza kumpa hayati Mwai Kibaki heshima za mwisho, kiongozi rais wa 3 wa Jamhuri ya Kenya ambaye aliaga tarehe 22 mwezi Aprili. Tayari wanawe na familia ya hayati Mwai Kibaki wamewasili hapa katika majengo ya bunge na wanapokelewa na viongozi wa dini pamoja na wale wanaohusika na maandalizi ya shughuli hii nzima. Tayari wamewapokea na wameelekezwa mahali ambapo mwili wake upo kwa sasa kwa ajili ya kupewa heshima za mwisho na Wakenya ambao watakuwa wanapata fursa hiyo. Hivyo basi mtazamaji, ni katika majengo ya bunge ambapo tunaendelea kuja kwako moja kwa moja na kukuletea picha za moja kwa moja kuhusiana na shughuli nzima ya kuweza kutoa heshima za mwisho kwa kiongozi wa 3 wa taifa hili, hayati Mwai Kibaki, ambaye aliaga dunia tarehe 22 mwezi Aprili. Na kama jinsi ambavyo tuliweza kusema kwamba siku ya Ijumaa itakuwa ni siku ambayo Wakenya wameweza kuulizwa waweze kupokea mapumziko, na kisha siku ya Jumamosi ataweza kulazwa kwake nyumbani huko Othaya. Tutaendelea kukuletea habari za moja kwa moja, na kama jinsi ambavyo matukio yatakuwa yakitokea hapa, tutakuwa tukikueleza zaidi kuhusiana na ni yapi ambayo yanaendelea. Kwa sasa tunaendelea kumsubiri kiongozi wa taifa ambaye anatarajiwa kufika hapa muda wowote wa kufikia mwendo wa saa 4, na atakuwa akiwaongoza Wakenya katika kutoa heshima zao za mwisho. Endelea kutazama KBC Channel 1. Tuko hapa na tutakuwa tukikueleza mengi zaidi. Kwako JJ Kuria studioni.
Asante sana mwenzangu Beatrice Gatonye kutoka majengo ya bunge. Na kama alivyosema, tunamtarajia Rais Uhuru Kenyatta kuwasili katika majengo ya bunge muda wote kuanzia saa 3 ili kuongoza taifa katika shughuli ya kumpa heshima rais wa 3 wa Jamhuri ya Kenya, hayati mzee Mwai Kibaki. And in studio we continue with our analysis of the legacy of President Kibaki, but most importantly also as we talk about this very solemn ceremony ceremony that is going to be led by President Uhuru Kenyatta. So today is the viewing of the body, so is tomorrow, and accessible to the members of the public, as well as Wednesday. And then on Friday we have the interdenominational ceremony, burial ceremony happening at the Nyayo National Stadium, and then a private ceremony to inter the remains of President Kibaki in Othaya. But like I said, there's debates on whether to take him to Uhuru Gardens at the Heroes Corner or go to Othaya. Obviously that has to be decided by the family alongside the government of the Republic of Kenya, that is led by President Uhuru Kenyatta. In the studio, still have Joseph Kaguthi, an administrator who has served, actually he tells me, 5 administrations, the colonial one, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta's, Mzee Daniel Moi, Mzee Kibaki's, and under President Uhuru Kenyatta. And he appears to be irked or somehow unpleased by the provisions of a constitution that appeared to remove, according to Joseph Kaguthi, our nationhood. You appear to be very angry by the very act of removing the faces of presidents from our monies, to put what you're saying, feasting and off.
I mean, to replace the father of the nation, unaweka the likes of lions and giraffes and nini. What are you doing? Because this is human, money is human, and you want to bring the kids, everybody to see, even when you arrive at the airport and you are getting exchange from the dollar, you are foreign, and you start seeing the dove, you see the lion. What are you saying? I mean, there are things that we did on that constitution, and that's why I'm sorry for the very kidogo. I missed the BBI Article 4. Because we have to come and introduce nationhood, so that when we say Kenya is tahili heshima, like the way we are now, then at that stage, Kenya becomes higher than all of us, nationhood. So the minute you talk of anything nationhood, I become very happy. Now, I know you talked about but Kibaki not responding
to his
you
critics.
know, the structure, the one I knew, we came from where we saw four levels. There is a state, something coming from the head of state. Now, like this one, when he decided the nation has this number of days, we don't debate that. Then the head of government, then the head of the ruling party, then the person of the president. We appear to have mixed these ones. During Mzee Kibaki's time, as a head of state, you could get only his presidential press releasing anything which is basically state. Then head of government, as government, you had Alfred Mutua, who was protecting government, explaining what government is doing, and you know that he could bring people who explain mambo ya serikali. Then as a head of the political party, DP, then there is a Secretary General of DP who was explaining mambo ya political party. Then the person of Mzee Kibaki. So when there is criticism, you note that it will go to the government. So it can be debated, but not like now. You don't you make it vulnerable. Yeah, we are a bit vulnerable now because of the 4 offices mixed together is one. So sometimes you do not know whether somebody is criticizing the person of the president, the state, as a head of state, the office of the head of state, or the head of government, or the head of the ruling party. You can see the difference, and that's why I would love to get the office of the president back. So you attack the president. When I was in that office, I was in that office before I went to Nyanza, and you attack the president below the belt. There is a statement coming from the head of government, isn't it? So there you are.
And that is the different structures of government then, as compared to the current administration, obviously operating under a new constitution, where some of these operations have to be synergized. Victor, I wanted to, to engage you a bit so that you also engage Minister Munyao, because if you read through the history of President Kibaki's administration for the 10 years, and particularly his first 5 years.
Yes.
There are those who accuse the president of running with a kitchen cabinet that was largely drawn from his, area. To mean like an entrenchment of a systemic tribalism. Those who claim that the president surrounded himself with a kitchen cabinet from his area. I would want to, you to get Minister Munyao on the same.
Yes, before I let him answer that, if you can see that is a choir already lining up, most probably that is a State House choir, lining up at Parliament buildings, clear indications that President Uhuru Kenyatta is not far away from getting his way to the Parliament buildings there to lead the nation in, actually, Minister Munyao said that we should not use the word mourn, we should say celebrate. Actually, point of correction, that we should celebrate the life of President Mwai Kibaki, and of course we are here. That is where we get all the 100% clear pictures from Parliament. Coming to you, Minister, at some point President Mwai Kibaki fired the entire cabinet and as Kioria has put it, he was also accused of running a kitchen cabinet, and he never commented about it, and life was, according to him, life was very much normal.
The truth is, I was one of his cabinet ministers.
Okay.
And if there were any inner cabinet, I would have known.
Yes.
Because we all had an access to where Kibaki was. For an issue, you had to discuss with him. Anytime you book to go there, you were ready to go there. I never saw any inner cabinet. Of course, there were people from his area, but they were not preferred more than ourselves. I think we were all treated the same way, because not a single time I ever wanted to approach Kibaki that I failed to. No way.
Yes. You could easily approach you.
I all the time got a reception.
But of course...
And not only me, but I also the other... I know maybe because I was, even at that time, I was still involved in a Democratic Party. I was involved as a Secretary General and whatever. But he treated most of the cabinet ministers the same. And it was for that reason that regionally we were all equal and happier than whatever.
I was very happy.
So he never ran a kitchen cabinet?
No, not that I know.
Let him call the cabinet, tell him what we did.
Not that I know.
You know, they say that there is always another side of the coin. How was President Kibaki? You've talked about how good he was, but the other side of him that perhaps as a close friend whom you've worked with for over 30, 40 years. Tell me the other side of President Kibaki that people never knew.
Yeah, there are quite a number of issues that people might not have known, but whatever they may not have known, it may not be the right thing for me to start revealing.
Right.
But Kibaki was a fair person all through, and he used to treat us the same, and that is why the country was developed equally. Yeah, because it was a question of roads, a question of water, and every other thing. We were all treated equally. Yeah.
He was a Minister of Finance.
He was a Minister of Finance, and that was the right time. And one of the stability created that time is because of his consultation, even before presentation of budgets. It was very clear that there used to be a lot of consultation in a lot of other areas. And you see, he had also grown through other ministries, Minister of Commerce and Industry, and he knew the needs of the general traders in the country. He knew the needs of the farmers in the country, both farmers who are growing wheat, others who are doing milk production and all that. And that is why he equalized development.
You know, during his time, you sat in a cabinet meeting where the issue of free primary education was born.
Yeah.
It was hatched during his tenure, and now everybody is enjoying that particular, exercise from President Mwai Kibaki.
And they are enjoying, but there is still wish.
Yes.
There is still wish it was that time, because when Kibaki introduced it, it was real. And he introduced it at the time it was needed, because parents had suffered enough, and they were all crying for it. So it came at the right time.
You're right.
And that's why even now the parents want support of the government on this issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kioria, one thing about being a journalist is that we get History 101 at the point that we need it. Sitting with Minister Mwai, we get that info, but that probably we never recorded at some point. You know, the inner secrets that used to happen, like the issue of CBC. Who knew that CBC was hatched during President Kibaki's time as the president? And just to mention is that there will be a 12th Parliament sitting on Wednesday. That has been called by Justin Muturi, who is the Speaker of the National Assembly, and the national, and actually this will be on 27th of April, a day set aside as a special sitting of the National Assembly, and the special sitting shall be held in the National Assembly Chamber, Main Parliament Buildings, Nairobi, commencing at 2:30 p.m. Now, the business on that particular day will be the procedural notification to the assembled House with respect to the presidential proclamation of 22nd April, that is 2022, regarding the demise of the third president of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Honorable Emilio Mwai Kibaki. And the second business of the day will be exceptional motion on honor and tributes of the House to the late third president of the Republic of Kenya, that is His Excellency Honorable Emilio Mwai Kibaki, CGH, following the presidential proclamation of 22nd April of 2022. So all members of parliament have been given that special sitting that will happen on Wednesday from 2:30 p.m. And of course, it's still a beehive of activity at parliament buildings there, and President Uhuru Kenyatta will snake his way at that particular point. You know what happened? On the burial day, and during the mass interdenominational prayer meeting session at Nyayo National Stadium, President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy will share the same podium. This is the point that all the differences are put aside. And we've seen it, Jacob, we've seen it. But when it comes to national matters, differences aside, right?
Yeah. Well, it is important that those differences are kept aside, and that is part of nationhood, or being a people and a nation. But it's also important to be careful about politicians, because I don't think they're really rivals as we like taking it, taking matters too seriously. They are never rivals. And one of the people you expect here, and that will be the sign that the president is on the way, is actually the arrival of the deputy president. That would,
he'll be there first.
Once he arrives, it's the biggest sign ever that now the president is actually 5 minutes away from the venue of this event. And looking at what is happening on screen right now, because I've seen the arrival of the Inspector General of Police, Mutembei. I've also seen several service commanders arrive at parliament buildings. It's also an indication that the president is not far off from setting off from State House to come to the parliament buildings for this very important event. But my senior Joseph Kagudi was nodding here when you were talking about keeping the differences aside for the sake of country. Joseph.
Yes. This is the way it should be, and that's why Mzee Mwenyewe atakwambia we are in the civil service, like provincial administration. We're very complex. We work with none and we work with all, so that at times like this time you respect and you bring everybody together. This is a time that you remove all your differences and now fall on the national level, the country, our country. We are now on this celebration, as Mzee has told us, and therefore everybody must feel. You remember during the bomb blast? During the bomb blast, I was peace in Nairobi here. And you remember, and the others, the big guns who are Kibaki and all the others, they came in one combi to the bomb blast site. Nairobi that time was under the government of DP. Even the deputy mayor, the mayor were all DP. And unasahau vitu yote. That's why Article 4 of the BBI does state the country you leave anything. Expect that even you in the media, mujaribu kutuunite sana, tuachane na vitu dogo sasa ya competitive politics, so we come together as one nation.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And you know, this happens at a very critical time because hadn't this very sad event happened, obviously everybody would be in the campaign trail.
Yes.
You remember the deputy president has actually put off his 3 days of campaign in Western Kenya to celebrate the life of President Kibaki. Obviously for the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, it was not possible for him to postpone that trip abroad, but I'm sure wherever he is serving as Prime Minister with President Mwai Kibaki, he's also affected in one way or another. And Victor, generally, that's the mood and feel. And I think Joseph Kagubi feels we have not done enough to cultivate nationhood in this country in terms of establishing what is our national value, what is our national fabric, what binds us together more, what is our identity. Probably is a big question for him.
Even you ask a little more. What are our strategic interests that we can go to war if you interfere with that? I looked at the constitution on nationhood, duties and responsibilities of citizens. I looked at the constitution of Somalia, Ethiopia, Sudan, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda. Kenya does not have that provision of the duties and responsibilities of citizens. Therefore, you can see us, apart from Kenya, istahili, heshima, you see us cannibalizing ourselves. So the minute you ask that question is a very pertinent question, and we would wish.
And that's the family of President Kibaki, his 3 sons and daughter, now making their way to where the casket lays, or the body of the president will be kept. And you know, those are preliminary pointers to that the president is not really far off from getting to Parliament. And obviously when he comes, we shall be handing the program over to but look, the judicial system, that's the Chief Justice and all the judges, and actually in their robes, including the Chief Registrar, Anna Madi, all coming to pay their last respects to President Mwai Kibaki. And Victor, very importantly, because you remember former Chief Justice Willy Mutunga. You remember during the retirement of President Kibaki, when he was awarding him that golf club and stuff like that, he said there's a direct line from State House to the office of a Chief Justice, and never did it ring during the reign of President Kibaki. Yes, to the Chief Justice. Quite an interesting, a man who really wanted institutions to function as they were, without interference. And he's actually one of the reasons you're sitting where you're sitting and saying the things you're saying, because previously?
It's a very, I have Minister here who is smiling when you mentioned the word that at no point did that phone ring. Because when you look at the independence of all these independent bodies, we have got the legislature, we have got the judiciary, and of course the executive. All these bodies are deemed to be independent. And as Minister said, Kibaki had a particular way of running his own kind of, affairs. He was an absolutist. Whatever he wanted that way, and for the good of the nation. All right, for the good of the nation. And probably just to bring to your attention is that at this particular level, you see the judiciary is now represented by the registrar, that is Anna Madi, in their ceremonial robe. We have got the Chief Justice will also be making her way there. There you have them. It's quite important to note that that is another wing of the government which President Mwai Kibaki led. And so we expect them to take charge at this particular point before the public is, before Parliament is open to the public to view the body of the late president. And just to mention that security is well taken care of. Security is well taken care of because it is a military affair.
Victor, and not to overlap, just a bit, because when I see the judiciary, it reminds me of the radical surgery in the judiciary that was actually spearheaded by President Mwai Kibaki when he took over.
Yes.
There was a general feeling that, you know, the judiciary was under capture or was operating under the hand of the executive. And there were judges that appeared to be either corrupt or were leaning towards the system as much. And therefore, to restore the confidence of Kenyans into the judiciary. You remember Judge Gisheru?
Yes.
Is the one who led this radical surgery as Chief Justice, but under President Mwai Kibaki, to try and restore confidence in the institution of judiciary.
You remember the catchphrase, the small fish, the big fish, and all manner of fishes will not be spared. And see, that's how it's begun.
Another thing, but no, we should not forget, and you people should be promoting it, is this a Vision 2030.
Which
you know, Vision 2030 stabilize almost everything in this country. And Mike, when you talk about Vision 2030, from the time it was initiated to it's still on, and it shows that up to 2030, whatever is going to be done is what Kibaki laid down on, because that is all what we are working on.
Where are we in terms of a scale of 100%?
Oh, yeah.
Where are we?
No, we are progressing very, very well, because whatever you do, you come in, you promote whatever was left behind to achieve what was aimed at that time, whether it is issue of water, issue of education, electricity, whatever, roads and all that. You are all the time looking at that booklet of Vision 2030.
Absolutely.
It was a very good thinking.
You were members of the golf club. You used to play golf together.
We were members of golf club, but we were also golfers. We used to play golf together in Mutahi, in Machakos, and in Mombasa, all that. And Kibaki was very good. And you know, in golf, you play either two of you or single or four of you. The maximum is four. And you are all given partners. And he never used to choose who to play with, but then as you play, you used to enjoy so much, particularly when he's kicking off. Oh, very well, you really enjoy. And the best concentration. I think concentration comes at that time when you look at that little ball kicking with a very small little stick. And you can't miss it. You all the time do it. And particularly when you are now chipping in or patting to put in that small little hole.
He was a good golf player.
Good golf player.
Remember him.
And immediately after that, you go and relax, talking very well, having freedom. And he would mix with everybody at that time. You know, and even at that time, he's a president. But when you go to mix after the social gathering, you will never know who is who. Because he welcomes you all.
I'm made to understand that out of office, President Mwai Kibaki never used to discuss matters politics.
No, Kibaki would not take any issue about politics. But the state of the country, yes, economically, or getting information, whatever have you, that was welcome to him.
In 2002, Minister, in 2002, the entire nation was charged. At that particular point, nobody knew President Mwai Kibaki, nobody knew Kijana Wamalwa, nobody knew Charity Ngilu, nobody knew, apart from Raila Odinga, who was agitating for democracy and all that. But all of a sudden, all the posters across the country was for President Mwai Kibaki, Kijana Wamalwa, Charity Ngilu, and many other dignitaries during that.
That is the time we came as NAC, because we collected all these other parties and then came back together. In fact, we even shifted from our own office, because our office was in Kitanga Road. And in that area, just along there, we got a building and opened a new office called NAC office. All the other parties, you leave whatever office you are, that was a common office for NAC, the National Alliance. And that is the time we all came together, forgot whatever you had as a leader of your own party, but to form one lineup.
Absolutely.
And that brought us together.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll talk more about 2002 because it was a defining moment. Because when he got the shield and the instruments of power, he was on a wheelchair after attending his treatment way in abroad, which was facilitated, so to speak, by Raila odinga, as people would say. But then I'll get to details on that. Jacob, you know what happens is that this particular function is a military affair led by the Kenya Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. Bwana PC will correct me if I'm wrong, because at this particular point, the head of state is the head of state, and President Mwai Kibaki was at the echelon of his, you know, the mantle as the commander-in-chief. So we would expect everything done by the seniors at the military base. Bwana PC, just to ask you this, how would it look like when we head to Nyeri? Because it's a military affair, we should expect a lot of precision from now until the point the president will be laid to rest, right?
You can take it up, Bwana PC.
You know, it depends on that national committee. There's a national committee which is sensitive to the requirements of the people on the ground. Remember, he is a head of state. He is there for hours. But the people of Nyeri, they are the ones who are donating him throughout to go to the national level. Therefore, they got to be considered by that committee. The county government, for instance, you've seen that they have even issued their statement. They are part of the interest group, the family. So the level from here is likely to be cascaded in a different manner so that it takes interest of the local environment. If you remember, you alluded to the heroes
corner to Uhuru.
The heroes corner. During the time we were burying the late Jaramogi Odinga, one of the positions that had been taken, I think this was Damas Otieno, the minister at that time, he said if the family wants to donate so that we take him to another level, government can consider. For me, I would like people, the leaders of the head of state, if they are brought here, the multiplier effect in terms of benefit, it is better at Heroes Corner other than Nyumbani. Because even me, the mausoleum we put at Nyamira Kango, I've never visited there, but if it was here, I would be seeing certain people, because it's enough ground. We could do that so that there is a concentration of our history, and I repeat, not natural history, national history. So we start being together, whereby you see this one, this was the leader of opposition, then it became government, this, and then we bring it together. So I cannot tell you for sure which direction they will take, because there is a committee now organizing it with all the stakeholders and the owners of the stake are involved.
Absolutely, and I'm sure the Minister for Interior, who is heading that committee, that is Dr. Fred Matiang'i, will be updating us, of course, in the coming days as regards the plans to inter the body of the third president of the Republic, Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. But of course, before we hand back to Victor, there's this question, because the first point when people interact with Mwai Kibaki's economic policies is when he has become Minister for Finance and Planning. And there's a lot of praise coming from around that time. For the sake of generations that were not able to experience that time, probably tell us, what did Kibaki do, and what was the ripple effect on the economy when he becomes Minister for Finance and National Planning?
You know, Kibaki became Finance Minister during the time of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. And the blueprints that you are seeing, if you subtract his contribution on the economic development and direction of this country, is a different country altogether. The impact is that big. Just look at it this way. Leave alone even the time I was talking about the session of paper, the development plans. One development plan, for instance, which he did, I regret it was not implemented. The 1979-83 National Development Plan, it was based on projects How many hurricanes do we use, instead of the cans? How many umbrellas? This factory is ready for implementation. This one, and using the Harambee spirit, the cooperative movement, pick this and implement, pick this and implement. But unfortunately, when Mwai took over, he more or less set it aside. You remember, he was a different, he took from a person who was very, very strong. So anaenda huko anaulizwa, tunataka health center, chukweni, tunataka hospitali, chukweni, tunataka alami hapa, chukweni, tunataka A-levels, chukweni. So we more or less suspended that national development plan. It didn't come back again. But if you remove, look at it this way, even when he became president, with Mzee here, as their ministers, we were collecting about 180 billion, our budget. By the time he was leaving, it was almost hitting $1 trillion. It's like a revolution. Just look at the number of times. It's just like the way the current president has done. If you look at where he picked it and where he is now, it's mind-boggling. Only that because of what I told you about what is coming through. So you cannot quantify quickly. It will take a bit of time to know exactly.
Let me cut you short to just say that Martin Nyagawambora, the chair of the Council of Governors, is making his way to Parliament buildings. And of course, presidential hopeful on Chama cha Usawa, the governor for the great county of Murang'a, Mwangi Wairia, is accompanying Martin Nyagawambora to the Parliament buildings as the country pays its last respects as we celebrate the life of Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. Of course, you are marrying the economic think tank of the president then as Minister for Finance and how he carried it forward as president.
Look at it this way again. We reached a level, I remember one time, his Minister for Finance, was it Bwana Kimunya? He went to one of the international conferences and said, we are funding our budget to the tune of 96%. Everybody said, in a that wild country like this? Yeah, because you remember, he even changed from the Mwai to him that the embassies used to have a caucus, put a lot of pressure on the government. He relaxed it, and the ministers were running the country. And he said, tutafunga nyinyi kama hamtatoa kodi. Remember? And the Waweru just shot.
You were talking about Alfred Mutua, the former spokesperson of government, and there he is, actually coming into Parliament. There's Governor Uhuru of Kirinyaga and Amason Jeffa Kingi. Amason Jeffa Kingi was actually the Minister for East African Cooperation during the second term of President Kibaki when sharing government with Raila odinga. And there's also Governor Mutahi Kahiga. He's actually President Kibaki's governor in Nyeri. All those governors coming in to pay the last respects to President Mwai Kibaki. I think at some point even Uhuru was serving at Treasury alongside President Uhuru Kenyatta as Minister for Finance then. And Uhuru was, I think, Under Secretary for Planning in Treasury. And so these people in one way or another have a working relationship again with the president.
Including our current president.
Oh yes. In many ways.
When he read his first budget, I saw Waheshimiwa, they were not believing that if you look at it and if you play that clip, you see them saying, where will it be done? How will it happen? And the impact of the guidance from Mzee Kibaki.
All right.
It is there.
Actually, the relationship with President Kibaki, President Uhuru Kenyatta goes further because the godfather of President Kenyatta is actually President Mwai Kibaki. So the relationship goes a bit further. Obviously, as we continue to see the live pictures coming from Parliament, Victor, before you hand it over to us, you were speaking about the 2002 moment. And it is very important, to pick from Minister Munyao about that, the intense time, a handover from President Mwai to the new president who is on a wheelchair, President Mwai Kibaki.
Absolutely. Just to mention that, we remember the Unbogable song. It's still fresh in our mind. In fact, if you ask someone, I am unbogable, and everybody will sing that song. At that particular point when President Kibaki came from London after getting his treatment and straight to Uhuru Park and getting the reins of power, what was the mood like for people who never saw that particular point?
The mood was really, you could see. And even on that side,
yes,
is the first time I saw Mwai lining up, because you see that is the time he was handing over power.
Right, right.
And we all had to go in there. He had a particular place to sit, but I don't think he said where he wanted to sit, because he was not sure of what is happening. Because, you know, the whole of Uhuru Park was completely full, up to that area of Ministry of Health. The entire area, and Austin's Church, the area was fully covered, and everybody wanted to see and hear Honorable Kibaki speak, and wanted to see what the leaders are coming to see. It was a wonderful day, wonderful, wonderful.
And it was a smooth transition, though so painful. It was
so cool,
a sad one.
So cool, and everybody was ready to do whatever we needed to do, which was very good, actually.
Did you ever expect at any given point that President Kibaki would get to that seat?
Yeah, of course, when we were fighting earlier, we were fighting for him to get it, but we didn't expect him to get it in that situation. But even when he got in that situation, it was overall good, because he was courageous enough and he managed. And most ought to be brought to Uhuru Stadium at that time,
yes,
and make a full speech to everybody when the area was completely full, and we are all quiet to listen. It was a great thing. Great thing.
Okay. Before I take you to Nancy Okware, there is this point that most people can easily relate to President Mwai Kibaki as compared to President Moi. Perhaps PC Kaguthi would tell us how it was then, where we would line up for a whole day. It was a holiday in your area. When President Moi was coming to your area, you would line up. But with with the PC Kaguthi, who would marshal up all the DOs, the DCs, and the Land Rovers to line up for President Moi. But with Kibaki, it was different. He would pop in a particular area, address the gathering, and go. Just to mention, how was it with President Mwai Kibaki?
No, Mwai Kibaki was cool, like you have just said.
Yes.
And his information and the tours were all cool. Although the information used to be spread all around, because that's the purpose of the provincial administration, to align ways. But every time he comes, he was cool and everything, and I think it was wonderful. Yeah.
Okay.
Totally different from what we were seeing during the time of Wanakaguthi.
Wanakaguthi will tell us how it was, you know, the Land Rovers way back then, and
you know, I left
from 4 o'clock.
I retired a little earlier. 1999.
All right. Obviously, before you express it, let's just show the live pictures of some of the dignitaries making their way to Parliament buildings. I think that should be Governor Anne Kananu of Nairobi, making her way to Parliament buildings. And PC Kaguthi, you will pick up on that, you know, about the differences between President Kibaki and President Moi. But first of all, let's rush to the CBD and link up with Nancy Okware, and then come back in studio and give us the experience of Moi and Kibaki. But Nancy Okware, if you can hear me, probably give us a feel of how the Central Business District is looking as the country mourns or celebrates the life of President Kibaki. Okware.
Well, a very good morning to you, and John Jacob Kioria back in studio. We are coming to you live from Kenyatta Avenue. This is one of the routes that President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to use as he heads towards Parliament to lead the nation, or rather to lead the nation in beginning the 3 days where the country is supposed to be, members of the public are supposed to be given an opportunity to walk towards the Parliament precincts and view the body of the late retired President Mwai Kibaki. We do expect that any minute at around 10 a.m. the President will be coming through the State House Road and connecting with Kenyatta Avenue, and it is after that that he's going to use Uhuru Highway all the way to Parliament buildings. Right now, as we speak, traffic is still flowing normally along this route, but we do expect that any minute before 10 a.m. the routes will be cleared just to allow a clear flow of traffic as the head of state makes his way to Parliament. As we are aware, is that the body of the late retired President Mwai Kibaki already arrived at Parliament buildings at around 7:20 a.m. in the morning, and of course dignitaries are already arriving there, awaiting the arrival of President Uhuru Kenyatta. A number of Kenyans have been expressing their views on what they will remember the late president with, and right here at Kenyatta Avenue I'm joined by one Kenyan who is going to tell us his fond memories of the late president. Shukran sana kwa kujiunga nasi. Pengine tunapoanza tueleze ni kipi ambacho utamkumbuka marehemu ama hayati Mwai Kibaki zaidi?
Marehemu President retired Mwai Kibaki namkumbuka sana. Kuna mengi mema nimeona kwa maisha yangu, hata kwa maisha ya Wakenya kupitia kwa uongozi wake. Mimi nimesoma hiyo wakati kabla hajakuwa kiongozi, lakini kwa sababu wazazi wangu hawakuwa na uwezo, hawakuwa na kazi ya kutosha, nilikuwa mwerevu sana, lakini sikumaliza shule kwa sababu wazazi wangu hawangeweza kunilipia karo. Wenye tulisoma nao, wenye wazazi wao wangewalipia karo, walisoma. Na baada ya hapo Kibaki alipochukua mpaka leo watoto werevu wote wanaenda shule. Mpaka hata leo kina kijana wangu amefanya mtihani wa kidato cha 4 na amesoma vizuri akamaliza, na tena anaenda university kwa sababu ya pesa ya CDF na hiyo pesa nyingine, kwa sababu watoto werevu sasa hiyo wanaenda shule. Nashukuru sana kwa sababu ya uongozi wa Kibaki. Kuna vitu hatukuwa tunaona wakati ule, lakini tumekuja tukayaona mengi sana. Naweza sema hata ile wakati tulikuwa tunaona hizi magari kubwa, tulikuwa naona kwa movie ya Nigeria, magari kubwa kama Alphard, hizi manoa tulikuwa tunaona kwa movie ya Nigeria. Lakini Kibaki alipopata uongozi, saa hii ukiona magari hizi kubwa unaona wamama ndio wanaendesha. Wakati ule hata wenye tulikuwa tunaona wakifanya kazi kama walimu, kwa shule walimu wetu walikuwa wanakuja na baiskeli, wengine walikuwa wanakuja kwa miguu. Saa hii walimu wanaenda na mapikipiki. Tulikuwa tunaona vitu kama pikipiki, tulikuwa tunaona wengine wakifanya nayo boda huko Uganda, lakini Kenya ilikuwa ni mabaiskeli. Kibaki alipochukua kwa sababu ya uongozi mzuri, saa hii kila area vijana wako na mapikipiki. Maisha imeendelea kwa hali mzuri. Nimeona mabarabara za lami hata upande wa nyumbani. Vitu vingi sana naweza sema kwa mzee. Na hata ukiangalia upande wa siasa, upande wa ufisadi, kuna wale wenye walikuwa hata wenye wanatoka kwa jamii wake walipokuwa wanapatikana na makosa, watu kama viongozi kama Mwiraria, viongozi kama Murungaru walikuwa na resign, wanawacha kazi na wametoka kwa jamii yake. Hiyo inaonyesha uongozi mzuri. Mzee kuna mengi naweza sema, kwa sababu hata hali yake ya kuongea, hakuwa mtu mwenye anaongea mambo ambao unaona inaweza umiza nchi. Kama kitu ilikuwa ni mbaya, saa nyingine angesema jambo yenye watu wangecheka kuwa mavi ya kuku, lakini alikuwa ni mtu anamaanisha vitu zake. Nashukuru kwa sababu uongozi wake imefanya mpaka leo kuna vitu bado zinaendelea kufanywa, na zilikuwa ni vision yake. Ndio raisi ama ndio kiongozi nimeona akiwa kuongozini na akatoka akiwa na vision. Tumekuwa na vision 2030. Hiyo vision 2030 mpaka leo kuna vitu tunaona mpaka saa hii zinafanywa. Nashukuru sana. Hata wakati ule kuna vitu tulikuwa tunaona na hayakuwa kwa hali ya juu. Nikiongea hata unaangalia watu kama watangazaji, watu kama Leonard Mambo Botela, walikuwa na kufanya kazi mzuri sana, lakini maisha yao haikuwa juu. Lakini ukiangalia saa hii watangazaji, watu kama Nimro Mtabu, watangazaji wengine wako sawa, wanatembea na magari kubwa, wanaishi kwa manyumba ya fahari. Nashukuru kwa uongozi wa aliyekuwa rais, na mimi nashukuru kwa maisha yake, na Mungu amweke mahali pema peponi.
Asante sana.
Asante sana.
Yes, John Jacob Kioria, that is one of the Kenyans just expressing the fond memories that he remembers the late President Mwai Kibaki. And of course, we do expect that any minute, some minutes to 10 a.m., the head of state, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta, will be using this route, that is Kenyatta Avenue, as he heads towards Parliament building. And we will be on standby to bring our viewers that procession live right here on KBC Channel 1. For now, it's back to you in studio.
All right. Thank you very much, Nancy Okwara. And of course, listening to that gentleman, he has quite a quick grasp of what the presidency of Mwai Kibaki meant for him as a person, because equal opportunity for every child to go to school, irrespective of social status, was quite an important thing. There's a question he had been asked about the comparison between President Daniel Moi, when he's coming to your area, it's almost a near holiday. Even schools have to stop because everybody has to line up and receive the president. But Kibaki's time, it appears like nothing much.
And institution,
every leader,
if you don't invest,
you know, the president is the most informed single person in any country. Every leader has their own style. The style of President Moi transition from Kenyatta to him was such that Kenyatta was in Nakuru, anakuja Nairobi, Gatundu, Mombasa, that kind of thing. Here comes a president, he wants to touch the ground, visiting everywhere. Then comes Mzee Kibaki. He is in a wheelchair. So his level of communication had to change, isn't it? So when the president is coming to the area, every PC had his own style. Like my style is that huyu ni mwanasiasa anataka watu. So you mobilize watu.
You mobilize.
And Nyanza people are loyalist community, so they just come and you get the visit. What he is communicating becomes very good. That's the difference.
Okay.
But when you look at Mzee Kibaki now, you know, to me as a personal tribute, you know, he is the architect of modern Kenya. If you look at what he did, a liberal futuristic thinker who put things, structures for future implementation. And when you talk about sessional paper number 10, you see what he was seeing. Then you remember there was another one, Degwa report. They put a lot of direction again on that. When Mzee Kibaki became president and he went to Odhaya, when they went to Sagana, he asked the watu, mulikuja kufanya nini? Mungekuwa munalima. Pesa mtatoa wapi? Hapana, uliza pesa itatoka kwa bank. Then huko anauliza the Social Economic Council, how can we reduce the interest rate? You remember that story, which is current. Akawaambia, wakasema that council kinalida choka, na akawaambia mumeanguka mtihani. Mkiuliza huyu mtu mfupi, that's Meraria, asichukue pesa from within the country, asiborrow from within. You remember big banks were like kiosks.
In the streets.
The interest came to 8%. You remember? Because his economic principles, he knows it and he directs it in such a manner that he was a real architect of what is going to happen. And that's why during his time, we stopped going to Bretton Woods, to all those people. Because he had a way of stopping those kind of monies, and he exploited the unexploited. But now we have shot so high that is, if you talk about President Moi, 180 billion with the 3.4 trillion is unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah.
And absolutely, from the pictures you see, the previous pictures you had is where the body of the president will be lying for viewing. And just right now, just a sneak view of, you know, that area. We expect the arrival of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Like you've seen from Nancy Okware, traffic is still flowing on Uhuru Highway normally, but at some point it will have to stop. So if you're leaving your house later than 9:30, probably you would have to readjust accordingly because the president will be using that route. And before we hand to Victor, we're going to talk about, you know, President Kibaki's place in the region because he was really a supporter of integration. And I'm just looking at some of the condolences messages sent by, because I see like a message from Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, who tweeted Friday afternoon, this afternoon I received sad news announcing the death of Honorable Emilio Mwai Kibaki, the third president of the Republic of Kenya. This is a sorrowful moment for the people of Kenya, the East African community, and the African continent. And he says, I extend on behalf of the people of Uganda heartfelt sympathies to the family of His Excellency Kibaki, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, and all Kenyans upon the loss of the great statesman. And he says, well, at the helm of Kenya's leadership, he played a fundamental role in achieving socio-economic transformation and prosperity for Kenyan people. He was active in deepening the roots of African unity and cooperation for peace, development, and security. Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, saying, my sincere condolences to the people of Kenya and to the family of President Kibaki. His dedication to the economic transformation of Kenya and his work towards regional integration will be remembered for many generations. The people of Rwanda stand with Kenya during this time. And then there was President Samia Suluhu of Tanzania saying, nimesikitishwa na taarifa za kifo cha mzee wetu na rais mstaafu wa Kenya mzee Mwai Kibaki. Afrika tumeondokewa na kiongozi mahiri na mtumishi bora wa umma, na kupa pole kaka yangu Mheshimiwa Rais Uhuru Kenyatta, wanafamilia na Wakenya wote. Mungu amweke mahali pema peponi. Amina. But that's how President Kibaki is viewed by the region in terms of his push for regional integration
and economic growth of the people of the region, starting from here. And if you look at when the community broke, 76,
yes,
you see him coming to the center gradually through sessional papers. You can name the one for 86 was a very powerful one. The one for 71 and 72, the one for economic growth and employment, sponsored by ILO that time. Gradually you see his contribution within and putting structures and laws that we will live with that for a long time until we now went to bombers to make certain changes so that the structure has changed. And a big shift now, instead of the county councils and what do you call it, the district focus, then we went now to actual devolution. So if after the actual devolution, then you see it is his kind of blueprint which was ruling this country economically in terms of growth.
All right.
So his contribution is major, and that's why I say he is an architect
of the modern day Kenya,
using his liberal and futuristic thoughts. And Jaramogi Odinga was not wrong to pull him out of Kampala.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think, Victor, the question you had asked about the differences between Moi and Kibaki has been answered in the sense that every president has their own leadership style. There was Moi and there was Kibaki. But there's something you had asked earlier about, political competition when it comes to issues like this and putting politics aside. And I just remembered in 2002, President Uhuru Kenyatta was contesting against his own godfather.
Yes.
President Mwai Kibaki. Actually, the person who gave him the name is actually President Kibaki. So,
yes.
I mean, politics in Kenya is just an interesting game.
It's an interesting beat. And, that is the same situation. When I had actually off-the-camera discussion with the minister here, President Kibaki was an opposition leader. At some point, he was a minister at some point, he was a vice president, and ultimately the president. that should teach you something, Kioria. Trust the process.
Yeah.
Trust the process. But so to ask you this question, you know, at that particular point, you know, the President Mwai Kibaki was getting the reign of power. NAC was in position. And that evening when now Moi was handing over power, it was a very sad moment because people were used to the one kidole moja, the KANU serikali ya Jogo, and now that President Kibaki was coming in power, it was a change of mood and everybody was waiting for that particular point to test the presidency of President Mwai Kibaki.
But the best thing and the easiest thing is that we had sold Democratic Party's manifesto earlier, even earlier,
yes,
to an extent that people of all levels had understood what it actually means, what Kibaki intends to achieve, what he's going to do when he comes there, and what he's going to do for everybody in every category. So people are taking it a little bit easier. The only thing which was a little bit difficult is when they started seeing the way security was managed at that time. Because there was a lot of liberty and a lot of mixing up.
Yeah. And when now, a day came after now he was leaving State House, he was now retiring, and there was that chopper. Now President Kibaki was now leaving State House. It was a very sad evening again, and the pictures we would see on his face, leaving power. Perhaps he held this country with a lot of high esteem.
Well, with him, when he was free in his heart to leave the office at that time, because he was a constitutional man, he knew what he was serving and all that. But the public could not believe that this is what it is. So that's why finally there was that emotion that I'm leaving here and all sorts of things. Otherwise, it was quite okay.
You know, one funny thing is that I was reading on the newspapers here, Jacob, is that at some point President Mwai Kibaki had to run for his dear life when he was in the opposition way back then. He was agitating to topple during, in 1998 actually, when a crowd charged towards where he was adamant to hold a rally. And when raiders, you know, raided the event, the story has it that President Mwai Kibaki had to run and leave one shoe behind, and it's not yet known who picked the other side and took it to him. But that was way back then. That, Bona Minister, that tells the other side of him of being a staunch agitator of democracy.
Kabisa. And he was a beginner, and he really initiated and stood for democracy, liberty or war, and providing freedom. You know, sorts of things. And it was very great.
Absolutely. Okay, pictures on your screen is that, the body will lie in state there, and we have got two options. In a situation like this one, the government can decide either to let the body be in a coffin or outside a coffin. And in this case, President, all the three presidents, starting with the President, the late Mzee Kenyatta, Mwai Kibaki, and President Moi, were all outside the coffin. So that is as per the government decision on how to do things. Bona Minister, it's the same position that President Kenyatta, President Moi, and now President Mwai Kibaki were laid in three successions.
It is the same, but in any case, the committees which are government committees which are all the time formed to perform this, they follow the pattern of each other. And I'm sure the pattern has been the same, and it will continue being the same. Like you see the way they have started inviting leaders left and right.
Yes.
That protocol will have to follow.
And of course, it's important to say that during the interdenominational
and
prayer,
it may not be only Kenyan. There might be other leaders from way in East Africa who will also come, want to visit Honorable Mwai Kibaki.
Absolutely. And because of that program, most likely that several heads of state and former dignitaries also attend that particular event on Friday and Saturday. So it will be a busy week as the president rolled out a 5-day busy week for the late President Mwai Kibaki.
No wonder most of the things the government has actually held up. All the plans which were to be, even the campaigns, are all held up until we see the end of
absolutely. It's quite it wants to mention that even all the campaigns have been put on the back burner.
Have all been withheld until after Saturday.
Absolutely. Now,
and in any case, this is also a good weekend because it will have about 4 or 5 days of holiday from Friday to Tuesday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it joined the food run.
You know, there is this bit of the president's favorite meal. What would you enjoy, the two of you, during your point? You know, outside politics, now you're just relaxing as gentlemen.
Very well. And he used to be very good. You have even seen there is somebody called Macharia from Nyeri who has been talking about the way he used to entertain the president. Anytime he visited the area, he had a particular place he used to sit, meet whoever else in that place, and then they go. You know, everybody enjoyed it that way because anytime we were with Kibaki, you knew what you expect, and you prepare for it, which is.
What was that? What was? Perhaps the PC would now want to get the secret.
No, but I may stop it there because those who were with him, they knew what they did.
I'm told that is General Badi, who is also arrived there at Parliament buildings. Preparations are actually at the advanced stage, signaling the arrival of President Kenyatta anytime from now. But of course, Deputy President William Ruto will also have to make his way there. And then later on, members of the public will also get an opportunity to view the body, as it happened with President Daniel Arap Moi. It's going to be a busy week for the nation, and of course we expect a lot to be taking place even right now in Nyeri County, there where the president will be laid to rest. In 2007, at the footsteps of Harambee House, now they walked out with then Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Perhaps it was the hardest decision that most people, lieutenants around him, never wanted him to sign that particular deal. But nonetheless, he still went ahead and signed the deal with Prime Minister Raila Odinga.
And the best thing is that the company at that time was not only in Kenya, but there were other leaders from the neighboring country who were seriously concerned about the peace in Kenya. Therefore, it was easy to sell what we wanted to achieve, because there were other leaders who were there to convince us that this is the right way to go and cool the country. Like you saw, I mean, Tanzanians were there, Congolese were there, Rwandans were there, and this was a major incident, particularly taking into account that the leader of all that was the American fellow.
And of course, we also remember that Operation Linda Inchi was hatched during Kibaki's government.
Very true, and they were operative.
And up to now, we have our soldiers in Somalia.
They were operative.
Yes.
And they are there. And even the peace created at that time is one which extends and cool the country all the way from that area. You remember the way shifters and all sorts of things used to operate with India. But for some time, it managed to cool the country. It was very good. Kibaki did great things to this country.
Okay. All right. So let's take a look at what's happening in Parliament, and let's listen. There you have it in Parliament.
arrival of Deputy President William Ruto at Parliament buildings. An indication now the President is on his way to Parliament buildings. Obviously, in ceremonies like this, the pointer to the President's closeness to arrival is the arrival of the Deputy President. And Dr. William Ruto is already in Parliament buildings. That means in about 5 minutes we will see. And of course, you can see a quarter guard of honor at the entrance of the Parliament buildings. That is to mean that those preparations are an indicator that the President is on his way. But probably before the President arrives, PC Kaguthi, it is important to talk about the nexus between President Kibaki's administration and President Kenyatta's administration. Now, the nexus is not just about succession, that these administrations succeeded Kibaki's, but even the planning of what President Uhuru Kenyatta is executing. There's a nexus on the planning happening during Kibaki's administration and President Uhuru Kenyatta now committing money and execution to some of his projects.
It is true. If you listen to Prime Minister talking, he will say hata ireri tulipanga, lapse tulipanga, but Uhuru came and started executing it. Why? Because the government is a perpetual succession institution, so that they are building on each other. That's the truth. That a good system should be. Remember the bureaucrats, permanent government called civil service. It is a permanent government because that regional commissioner or that commissioner of police. At the lower level, not the IG. They all continue government regime after regime. So what happens is the skew at the political level, what they call the political direction, and that's why we tell every citizen, please take part in elections because of the political risk. You elect a good government, you go very far. You elect a bad government, these civil servants will obey what cabinet has decided and what parliament has decided with, because that's the way it is. But the implementation is on a management, is on a perpetual succession, because it's an institution that is not going to stop. And that's the way it is recognized on the world of nations. So the investors, external investors here, they follow exactly like that. They follow to see who is doing what in the country, and is it going to change, is it not going to change, and they proceed.
Of course, we're going to be handing over this program officially to the team in Parliament. Of course, once President Uhuru Kenyatta makes his way to but that roundabout there is where the President will emerge from once he's made his way from State House all the way to Uhuru Highway, and then from that roundabout. And you can see the security arrangement around Parliament Road. That's where the President will emerge from, and then this entire exercise will begin. The President is leading the nation in celebrating the life of President Stanley Emilio Mwai Kibaki, born on the 15th of November 1931 and then rests on the 21st of April 2022. And of course, we continue to mourn and celebrate his life as a man who has a great legacy shaped in terms of how the economy grew during his reign, the free primary education, the border sector, but most importantly, even on issues of regional integration. It's quite interesting, PC Kaguthi, when we talk about Operation Linda Nchi, the men who launched this operation, the last one of them is President Mwai Kibaki, because there was George Saitoti as Minister for Internal Security then there was Yusuf Haji as Minister for Defense, and now President Mwai Kibaki. But most importantly, the operation is still continuing.
Yes, because the nation was getting threatened. They come all the way to Mada Island. We did not have an alternative but to go and destabilize them, because, you know, we have had a very, very nasty situation. Kenya has been a low pressure belt. During the time of Mejisu, people are running here. Sudan, the Sudan here. Immunization of Uganda here. You see the way we have been a low pressure belt. Somalia, from 91, we have never had a stable government. But now you get a raftag of people who are coming now to interfere with our system all the way to Westgate and so forth. So a decision was taken during his reign and with General that they now go stop it from the other side and support that government. So Kenya is at war until the African Union came to our aid, because we had now to defend ourselves. And that's when I asked you, what is Kenya's strategic interest beyond which we would be prepared to go to war? It's like that. We are being interfered with. We are not with the
It's a threat on our sovereignty.
Oh yes. So it turned out to be that way, and therefore there are things that we can't talk more than that. But we have been interfered with very, very badly, and we have survived by God's grace. That all those countries have been destabilized, and everybody was running here. One time we had the largest number of refugees. Even now, I don't think it has changed. The refugees in whether it's Kakuma or the one in
I think it's the president's motorcade now, heading towards Parliament. But of course, you can continue once you have a clear establishment of whether it's a motorcade. We'll be letting the people in.
Yeah. So the way you look at it is that we had to go to war as a necessity to stop that nonsense. And remember Nyumba Kumi, it came when we saw that even they started killing our elders in Kwale, Mombasa, and so forth. But now it has been contained. We are trading very well. Yeah, oh yes. And there's a semblance of government starting, even the elections starting to form the other side, so they can now protect their country and we become now good partners.
All right.
Yes.
I needed to ask you this, particularly on Nakada, because under President Kibaki, you were at the helm of
the campaign.
I went to ask, what was President Kibaki's interest when he launched Nakada?
It was started by Mzee Mwai the year before 2002, 2001. And what happened is that the reports came out that the future of this country is undermined by the youth partaking drugs and alcohol. There it is. That's how it started. But when it came, after he stopped the government of 2005, I was taken to Vice President's office. But then the political wing in that office said that I'm moderate, that I don't campaign against the legal drugs. But look, legal drugs is alcohol, is cigarette, these injectables, the one the Madoya Daktari. So I saw that I can't just work. So I went back to head of public service and told him, no, I'll have to walk away on the government because I cannot allow the advert, tobacco, nini to continue, and I still survive because I will ridicule the country. It will not be me. So that's the time it was decided. When Mzee Kibaki was asked by Mudhaura told me later, because I just told him that I'm going to resign. He just said, Nani hajui, remove Kaguthi from Nakada, it is dead. So as I came back to OP, until now I left it with a law of tobacco, with the law of Nakada in 2006.
All right.
Yeah.
Of course, the pictures you're seeing on your screen are Parliament buildings. The earlier pictures were on the normal traffic flow, on the normal routes. But those are the pictures outside the precincts of the Parliament buildings, where we expect President Uhuru Kenyatta to arrive any time from now as he leads the nation in celebrating the life of President Mwai Kibaki. Before I hand it over to Victor, just a quick run through the program is that from today up until Wednesday is the public viewing of the body of the third president of the Republic of Kenya from 9 a.m. all the way up until 5 p.m. and then the body will be taken back to the Lee Funeral Home, and that will happen for 3 days. On Friday, there's an interdenominational prayer service and or a memorial service in honor of President Kibaki at the Nyayo National Stadium, and on Friday, that's a public holiday for every Kenyan. And I'm sure, like Victor pointed out, we shall have several heads of state from different countries coming in to show their respects to President Mwai Kibaki. And then on Saturday, Nyeri County, Othaya, is where the body of President Kibaki will be interred. All factors remaining constant, obviously, if this debate about him being buried at the Heroes Corner does not continue. But so far, with the program from government is that President Kibaki will be interred in Othaya, a constituency he represented up until 2013 when he retired. He was their member of parliament. And we have the former vice president. He was actually the vice president of Kibaki in the second term. That is Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, making his way into, and I see being received by the deputy president as he makes his way into parliament. Obviously, we don't expect Prime Minister Raila Odinga in this event, bearing in mind that he's on a working tour in the United States of America. But before he went, he had his message to the nation, and saying Kibaki took charge, he led. If there was a person who was keen on leading his people and providing the morale for work, was President Mwai Kibaki. He was a team leader. That's how the former premier Raila Odinga remembers President.
Politicians worked together. You remember Kalonzo Musyoka was a member of KANU. Raila Odinga also was a student of Moi. All of them,
even the deputy president.
Even the deputy president was director of elections way back then.
And the president was the party leader.
Exactly.
So, and now you see Amos Kimunya, Minister for Lands, Minister for Finance,
and right now leader,
and Minister for Transport under President Kibaki.
In fact, right now, the minister was telling me that this is a point that you not even know that these politicians are currently in a different political sides. It's their time to come together. But Minister.
Yeah, it's very true. Look at what happened 2-3 days ago.
Right.
And what is happening now. Today, there's not, we are all together for one reason, to mourn a genuine who had just left us.
Yes.
Just, we would say there's a good celebration. If it were okay, we would encourage it, but...
yeah. All right.
Because it brings us together. Yeah.
Okay. We still have...
You can't imagine. You can't imagine.
According to the minister, you can't imagine that 3-4 days ago.
This is what was happening 3 days ago.
You should know.
Absolutely. Okay. Something that I would love to ask you, how did President Mwai Kibaki, that is, before we get there, that is Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka with the Deputy President there having a tete-a-tete. Of course, the President is almost arriving there. And once he arrives, we'll see a change of environment, and that would actually now open the door for the public to go in and view the body. And later on, it will be an open event for everyone. But, Minister, the President, that is the late President Mwai Kibaki, tried to demystify that elitist form of presidency during his tenure. He was more approachable, he was more interactive, he demystified this issue of, I am the king, and I'm among the people.
I think that this was also brought up by the way he grew up. Growing up from a member of parliament to a minister to a vice president and all that up to the time you become a president. All this time you have seen all sorts of levels, you have seen all sorts of consultation, and you see the right way to lead your country. This was a very good experience, and I'm sure he must have earned this from the way he grew up in all these social sectors.
It reminds me of a point when, immediately after he took over power, many people did not see him inviting the former President Moi to State House for a consultation. A couple of people were quite adamant. In fact, way back then, some were like, okay, fine, let's have a meeting in an open place. But he insisted, no, bring President Moi to State House, let's have a consultation. What would that show to a nation?
It shows that you knew what you were doing and you had prepared to lead your country to a different level. Because unless you are, well, if you are not prepared,
yes,
this thing will not happen. It shows that all the time when the priority for Kibaki was the country, not to an individual. The priority was the country, not to an individual. And that's why he took it that way, that anybody can now come and they continue consultations.
But most people were still adamant. You know, we had the likes of Chris Burungaru, who were the insiders, his foot soldiers. We had Mudaura. We had Martha Karua back then.
Yeah, because they were used to the former system. So for them to get completely converted to the new system now, it had to take a bit of time. But eventually they did. Because Kibaki himself, they saw the way Kibaki himself was behaving.
Okay.
That he was ignoring any other issue, but getting the prioritizing the country.
That is Deputy President William Ruto already lining up, and that is a clear and a perfect indication that President Uhuru Kenyatta should be there anytime from now. As for the program, he's supposed to be there at 10 a.m. It's now 4 minutes to 10, and therefore we should expect him to lead the nation. And of course, the military will be taking charge. The top government officials have lined up to receive the president. He will head straight to where the body is at the parliament buildings. Thereafter, he will be laid open for the public to view the body.
Jacob, the speaker is there.
Yes, the speaker is there, and of course, being the Speaker of the National Assembly, and that's where the event is taking place. Jacob, it must be a very busy day starting right now until Saturday.
Let me tell you, for journalists, it's a very, it's going to be a very tough week. And we have to do this because it's also, we are bound by duty to our nation also to do these things. And bearing in mind the stature of President Mwai Kibaki is something you have to do. So for from today up until Saturday, we are with you following each and every move and notifying Kenyans what is happening, including the preparations in Nairobi as well as in Nyeri County. But you see the service commanders as well as senior officials in the military and in the administration lining up to receive President Uhuru Kenyatta, obviously led by Deputy President William Ruto. And the speakers of the two houses, including Justin Muturi of the National Assembly, and that's quite the indicator that President Uhuru Kenyatta is on his way to a parliament to lead the nation in paying the last respects to President Mwai Kibaki, his predecessor. For that matter, and like BC Kaguthi was saying, the building blocks of what President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration has been able to achieve. Some of them were laid under President Mwai Kibaki. Remember the Thika Road, and President Uhuru Kenyatta has been able to build up on that legacy, and built more than 10 kilometers, 10,000 kilometers of tarmac, and you can see the magnificent expressway also happening. Nobody imagined, probably by the time Kenya was getting her independence, that we would ever see moments like this. Of course, I was not present, but PC Kaguthi was present that time. Nobody imagined that we would be seeing the site of Nairobi as we are seeing it today.
It is true. It's true. When you consider the pieces that this country has,
and here he is. This is the president. These are the lead vehicles coming to Parliament, and there you see the outriders. That means now we have to head over to Parliament officially.
Is a full escort, presidential escort.
Absolutely.
Yes. Exactly.
But it is quite interesting. And look at the vehicle that the president is. Yes. It has no flag because the president directed that no official motorcade from anybody who has the mandate to carry a flag on their vehicles, including the Chief Justice. Nobody will fly the Kenyan flag as a way of honoring President Mwai Kibaki.
And that must be...
This is the official motorcade now heading towards Parliament.
That is,
and I think today he's in his official limousine, right?
Exactly. And with a complete motorcade, the outriders. And that is Kenyatta Avenue, up, down, opposite, just right outside Serena Hotel, coming down to Kenyatta Avenue and the GPO roundabout, then taking their turn towards Parliament. Of course, in a very slow pace, considering the distance from State House to Parliament is just not so far. And in keeping the time, the formation of the outriders, the presidential formation, the official limo.
There he is. The official limousine, but has no, even the presidential standard is not up.
No, it's not there.
Yeah, even the presidential standard is not up. The flag is not up. But it's also important, Victor, to point out that Kenya Broadcasting Corporation means business.
Exactly.
Because we are bringing you live pictures all the way from State House, all the way up until, Parliament. And this is, our small gift, our small sacrifice in terms of honoring President Mwai Kibaki.
Exactly.
Now it's Uhuru Highway?
That is Uhuru Highway. And they're going to take a turn just after the Kenyatta Museum, then take their roundabout, the Parliament roundabout, then head straight to Parliament buildings. This is quite something because when you see the president coming out, this is an entire entourage of the president convoy making its way to Parliament. It shows a lot the level of respect that President Kenyatta has given President Mwai Kibaki.
And we are bound together as a people.
Exactly. Yes.
And united in this cause as a people. This is the very day, this is the very time to put every difference aside and stand together to celebrate a solid giant, a solid economist, a man who loved this country. Because, resigning from lecture halls, just when you're a very young lecturer,
and
to come and immerse yourself into the problems of a newly independent, actually not newly independent, not just yet, it is not independent just yet. So you're coming in to immerse yourself to the problems of an independent nation.
Right.
This is, quite a big sacrifice on the part of, Emilio Stanley, Mwai Kibaki. And probably this is the time to throw in, that very statement from the US, don't ask what your nation can do for you. Just ask yourself what you can do for your nation. And this is President Kibaki's contribution to his own country.
We predicted that at 10 a.m. the president would make his way. It's exactly 2 minutes past 10 a.m. And he's arrived. In terms of precision and time management, it shows that anything that goes with the military, precision is key.
Very important.
There is no time to be wasted. And PC Kagude will tell us this because time is of the essence. In the military, everything is time. And we have got 3 minutes past the hour. And the president is here. We can give him.
Finally.
Not so bad, we can give him for that. But nonetheless, exactly 10:03, the motorcade has arrived, and therefore thereafter the military will take it over. And you see the lining up, the motorcade stops
and that
behind.
is his limo now making its way into Parliament buildings.
And he's the only person getting into Parliament.
And different from other times, Victor, because whenever the president is coming to Parliament buildings, we always have a full guard of honor mounted in his honor outside Parliament precincts. You notice this is a solemn occasion. They're not there because the center of attraction, as PC Kagudi tells me, is President Mwai Kibaki today. That is the center of attraction today. That's why there's no guard of honor outside precincts of Parliament.
Absolutely.
For President Kenyatta, the head of state. There he goes. He's disembarking from his vehicle.
He's with the First Lady.
There you go.
Received. There you have it.
the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. The peace of Christ be with you always. And with your spirit. Scripture verse from Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 to 30. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. I am meek and humble of heart, and you'll find rest for yourselves. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Mwai Kibaki became God's temple, and the Spirit of God lived in him. With reverence, we bless his mortal body. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. We humbly and our brother and your servant, eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord,
and let perpetual life shine upon him.
may he rest in peace.
Amen.
May his soul and the souls of all the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in. May the peace of God, which is beyond all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and the love of God and His Son, our Lord Jesus Christ.
Amen.
May the Almighty God, may the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen. We now allow His Excellency the President to be in the body of the legislature, escorted by the city. Request the President to hold the dog so that we can have one photo with the family. Family members. The rest of us we allow His Excellency the Deputy President. After the national anthem, the service commanders. After the national anthem, the service commanders. Thank you, service commanders. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. VCDF and service commanders. After that, the honorable speakers of the National Assembly and Senate. Service commanders, all of them. Cabinet secretaries.
The viewing of the body of the late President Mwai Kibaki happening at Parliament buildings, and in the order of how senior government officials viewed the body, President Uhuru Kenyatta led the ceremony together with First Lady Margaret Kenyatta, and then the family members followed, and then the Deputy President William Ruto and the service commanders of the Kenya Defence Forces as well as other armed forces in the country, the speakers of both the National Assembly and the Senate, the majority and minority leaders, followed by cabinet secretaries and members of President Kenyatta's government, the ones who are currently viewing the body. And obviously we'll also see other senior officials, both politically and in terms of the technocratic operations of government, also viewing the body. But obviously we have to end this with our guests here. In terms of age, they are old men, so you don't want to keep them very much in studio. But quite an interesting point, PC Kaguthi saying, and of course I'll throw it back to Victor Law in a bit. But what I noticed there is that these people who have led in, this process of viewing the body, well, actually President Kibaki's ministers. You're looking at Uhuru Kenyatta, the Minister for Finance and Deputy Prime Minister, William Ruto's Minister for Agriculture. The minority and majority leaders were Amos Kimunya, Minister for Finance and Lands at some point, Samuel Pugisio for Information. You have James Orengo, the Minister for Lands. Actually, even Speaker Lusaka was his PS for livestock. It's quite interesting how leadership in the country operates. It's successive.
Government is teamwork. And offices keep changing. Lusaka was my DC in Muranga. And so forth. So I'm not surprised. If all goes well, we continue in that kind of process. Now, but there's a very big lesson for the younger people. We normally advise the young people this, not because of the Nakada and campaign against drug abuse. We advise them this, that remember, there are three things in life that matter. One is your health. Take care of your health, because that's the only one which you'll enjoy when you're in this world. Don't drink, don't spoil your health, don't do this and this. Number two, take care of your name and create a legacy, some space of yours. Look at what Mzee Kibaki has done. He created a legacy, a space, huge space. You can't quantify it for now. His own contributions. I've just told you, for planning and economic planning and matters of the direction of this country, as an architect of the republic called Kenya, if you remove him, you see very gaping gaps. In fact, they cannot be the same. So he has created that. Take care of your name, because that's what you live with. Don't take easy rules and simple things which annoy people. The third one is where you are going after this. That's why you saw Cardinal Joy coming to ceremonize this particular function. A big respect. So my thinking is that let's have this one as a very big lesson, and that's why we celebrate. To use Mzee's Waziri's language, we celebrate. As we celebrate, we hand over the batons for learning.
All right. So stand by so that we, get the last remarks from Minister Munyao. So we release both of you. Victor Olo, I think you can engage Minister Munyao. So we release them. I'm telling you, one day you will also get old.
Exactly. Ujana Nimoshi, and we have just to do a bit at this particular point. And I like what the PC has said, that three things that you need to take care of: your health, name, legacy, space. The third one, PC, you did mention. The third one?
It was the legacy.
The legacy. Okay.
Where you will go
after this. Okay. So your final remarks, Bona Minister. We, off the cuff, we talked about something, that it must be a very tough moment for President Uhuru Kenyatta at this particular point. Let's go down history lane. President Uhuru Kenyatta was there when Mzee Kenyatta was buried.
His father.
President Kenyatta was there when the predecessor, Mwai, was there. Yeah. And now President Kenyatta is there, when now the third president, Mwai Kibaki, is there. He's gone through the process. Must be difficult being President Uhuru Kenyatta at this point.
Very true. You could even see the emotions when President Uhuru Kenyatta stood up there to look at Kibaki. You imagine that he must be creating having all these imaginations. It's a terrible thing. It really moves you. But the most important thing, and what we appreciate, is what the government now has done.
Right.
To take up this issue so seriously. And the planners and everything, to plan an occasion of this kind is not a very easy thing. And for it to be done so nationally. And you see leaders coming into this faction, not even think about their past, but thinking about the concern of a gentleman called Mwai Kibaki, because of the route he made, the peace he created for this country,
right,
the stabilization of the economy to this country. People have got a lot to remember about Mwai Kibaki, and it is this time when we should all pray together. First, for God to cool his family, to cool Kenya, give peace to everybody, because Mwai Kibaki belongs to all of us, and he is with all of us. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I think at this particular point we just have to appreciate Bona PC Kaguthi for joining us in studio from 7 a.m. until now. It's a few minutes to 11, as well as Minister Munyao here, who've also been gracious enough to join the show for all those hours. We value your comments and contribution to the show. Now, it's now time for Ask Kioria. Vijana tubaki.
Vijana watabaki.
Vijana watabaki, wachape kazi.
We thank you.
We thank you. We thank you. Vijana tusukume gurudumu hapa. Wakati ambapo tunaendelea kuonyesha picha za moja kwa moja kutoka bunge la taifa.
Thank you so much.
Kuona mwili wa mzee Mwai Kibaki wakati kama huu. And it is quite interesting. You saw an officer there called George Nderito.
Yes.
George Nderito is a very interesting figure. He's now leading the presidential guard in terms of the commanding officer in terms of presidential guard. But he was a personal bodyguard to President Mwai Kibaki during his time as president, and now leading the presidential guard.
Right.
And his salute was different from others.
Yes.
He saluted, bowed, then saluted again.
Right.
You realize these other ones are just saluting.
So one salute.
But this one salutes, bows, and salutes. It is to show the great respect he had for this man that he has served for many years, and now serving President Kenyatta. Maybe we can just listen in from Parliament a bit, so we allow Minister Munyao and PC Kaguthi to exit. But there's a wall-to-wall coverage. We are still here for the long haul. Wish you well.
All right.
We wish you good luck.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for welcoming us in this memorial moment.
Asante sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Remember you.
Right.
And particularly you. I served with your father in Parliament.
Oh.
Yeah, I did.
You just passed by bubbles.
And I knew it very well. I knew it very well. I didn't know that you are the son of a great friend of mine.
still covering the body viewing of President Mwai Kibaki, the third president of the Republic of Kenya. Already President Uhuru Kenyatta and members of his cabinet have performed that rite, as well as the family of former President Mwai Kibaki, led by his 3 sons and daughter. And right about now, before we come back to studio, I want to take you straight to Isaac Lemoka, who is at the precincts of Parliament. And I understand he's on standby with a few guests, including a former PS in the ministry, in one of the ministries by President Kibaki, but now serving as the governor for West Pokot. That's John Lonyangapuo. Lemoka.
Na Professor Tangazo haya moja kwa moja kutoka majengo ya bunge, ambapo leo hii taifa la Kenya linaomboleza kifo cha rais wa 3 wa taifa la Kenya, Stanley Emilio Mwai Kibaki, ambaye aliaga siku ya Ijumaa iliyopita na kutangazwa rasmi na Rais Uhuru Kenyatta. Kifo chake kimetokea siku miezi kadhaa kabla ya uchaguzi mkuu, na papa hapa katika majengo ya bunge niko naye Profesa Lonyangapuo ambaye ni gavana wa West Pokot. Karibu sana Profesa, na tueleze, ni siku ambayo kwa hakika Kenya inaomboleza. Wewe kibinafsi utasema nini kuhusiana na kifo cha Rais Kibaki?
Kwanza nataka niseme tunaomboleza, pia tunasherehekea kazi ambayo alitutendea. Unaelewa, wanadamu, hata neno la Mungu linasema wanadamu anasaliwa mara moja, siku itafika pia ataaka duniani. Sisi wote dunia hii. So kwa hivyo kuwa na nafasi ya kuishi na kufanyiwa kazi na baba wetu Mwai Kibaki kwa miaka hiyo yote, akiwa one of the original founders of this nation. Wakati tulitinyakulia uhuru alikuwa ndani. Amekuwa one of the first ministers wa Afrika kabisa, alikuwa ndani mpaka sasa. So nataka niseme ya kwamba nyinyi wa Kenya wote pamoja na mimi tunataka tukumbuke yale yote alitutendea mpaka akawa president wakati ngumu juzi. Mnakumbuka tulikuwa na post election violence, na ile steering, leadership steering ile alituwekea mpaka nchi yetu ikawa stable, ikarudi akisaidiana na ndugu yake Raila na wengine. So niseme ya kwamba huyu mzee, ninyi wote wenye hamkujua Kibaki, ninyi wote wenye mulifanya kazi na yeye na mnamjua, vile watu wamedescribe yeye ni mtu mwenye ako na ungwana kwa uongozi yake na hata kwa maisha yake. So mimi, yeye mwenyewe ndiye alinichagua kuwa permanent secretary. Wakati yake yeye mwenyewe nilikuwa mkuu ya chuo kikuu Moi University, ile inaitwa sasa University of Eldoret, ilikuwa inaitwa Jepkoilel wakati huo, na akanitoa kule West Pokot mpaka akainua mimi nikafika mahali nilifika, kwa among the leaders. So niseme kwamba huyo mzee alitasama kila mahali, akaona watu wote, akachenga kona ya nchi ya Kenya. If you remember, hata wakati storm ilikuwa kubwa sana, ile security watu walikuwa wanataka sana ni kusikia sauti ya Kibaki atasema nini. Mtangoja siku ya kwanza hakuna, siku ya pili hakuna, mpaka hiyo shida itakapotulia, nyinyi ile mori na hasira na zote zimeisha, anawaambia na tuendelee na kazi. Hiyo ndio sauti ambayo tulisoea sana. Nataka niwaambie wa Kenya, poleni, lakini tujibe moyo. Alituachia heritage nzuri ya kupendana sisi wa Kenya, na akatulelea viongozi mwenye tuko naye sahi, President Uhuru Kenyatta. Na Kenya haitakuwa na shortage ya viongozi kama yeye. So jamii yake na watu ya Othaya, Nyeri, Kenya kwa ujumla, tunasimama na nyinyi tukisema poleni, na hata sisi pia tumejipa moyo. Huko West Pokot alitupea districts. If you can remember those days, kwanza mali naitwa theater in East Pokot, mahali inaitwa Baringo County. Mwenyewe alienda akapeana districts, akapeana nini. It was very good and I'm very proud of him. Niseme ya kwamba kiongozi wetu amelala, lakini matendo yake ataendelea kuongea kwa sasa na vizazi zijazo.
Shukrani sana gavana. Kidogo tu kabla ya kumaliza, Profesa, umekuwa permanent secretary na umefanya kazi na Mwai Kibaki. Tumeona miundo msingi, tumeona free primary education. Ni kipi ambacho hatukijui kuhusiana na Mwai Kibaki ambao wewe umefanya kazi na yeye? Labda
ile pengine mjui, ile yenye niliona kabisa, anakupea nafasi. Kama amekupa kazi ya kufanya kazi, anakupea complete freedom ya kufanya kazi mpaka uonyeshe mazuri yote ile uko nayo kuhusu hiyo kazi. Aliniweka kama pia za industry, pia za public works, bila interference. Akanipa pesa, nikisema lete pesa ya ujenzi hapa, akanipa. So kwa hivyo kiongozi mwenye aliona aliwajia watu uwezo ya kuflourish na kubombea mali wako, of course kutumia mali ya nchi ya Kenya ichenge. And that's why I'm very proud. Wakati yangu ndio tulikuja kurefurbish kama PS, tulirefurbish bunge hii. Unaona vile ilifanywa. So president anasema ifanywe namna hii, nikawa PS wakati huo. Sasa tukachapa kazi. Alafu sasa Parliamentary Service Commission wakaambiwa ndio hiyo pesa muendeleze na ifanywe. Na kitabu Kibaki alikuwa anafuata ile code ya ujenzi ya nchi. Piko kwa public works. You cannot build buildings too ovyo bila kufuata hiyo, especially ya government. Yeah.
Shukrani sana Profesa, na kila laheri nakutakia. Pole sana kwa kumpoteza kiongozi wako. Huyo si mwingine ila ni Profesa Lonyangapuo, gavana wa West Pokot, na pia niko naye mwaniaji wa ugavana wa Nairobi, Bwana Sakaja, ambaye pia yuko hapa na mimi. Karibu sana mheshimiwa. Ujambo?
Si jambo, asante sana.
Pole sana kwa kumpoteza rais wa Kenya.
Nafikiri pia pole kwako na kwa Kenya wote ambao sote tulimpenda rais wetu Mwai Kibaki. Na kumpoteza sio jambo rahisi. Na nchi yote inaomboleza wakati huu, na sio nchi tu ya Kenya, pia majirani wetu na mataifa mengi katika bara la Afrika na dunia mzima, kwa sababu alikuwa ni kiongozi wa kimataifa.
Wewe binafsi unamkumbukaje Rais Kibaki?
Nakumbuka Rais Kibaki kwa undani sana. Rais Kibaki alikuwa mmoja wa my mentors. Vile nilianza siasa nikiwa kijana sana. Wakati huo nikiwa katika uongozi wa wanafunzi katika chuo kikuu cha Nairobi, ndio nilipata kukutana na Rais Kibaki mara ya kwanza. Na nilikuwa nafikiria labda ni kiongozi mkubwa sana ambaye hatakuwa na wakati wa kutusikiza kama vijana. Lakini nakumbuka kila mara, hata baada ya hiyo mkutano wa kwanza, alikuwa ukizungumza naye anatoa notebook, alikuwa anaweka hapa na anaandika ukiwa na point ya maana. Kama huna point utajua hauna point. Lakini alikuwa ana ushawishi mzuri, alikuwa very good in the boardroom. Nakumbuka akijaribu kuturai, convince to support kwa election ya 2007. Akatupa hadithi, akatueleza kama umetafuta mpishi unataka kupikie katika muda wa saa moja, na ameanza kupika, lakini kwa dakika za kwanza 20 amepata vitunguu vimeoza, nyanya kuna shida. So anakimbia sokoni anunue, abadilishe, aje sasa aanze tena. Muda umewadia karibu ufike huo saa moja, lakini chakula kijaiva. Lakini unaweza nusia harufu, aroma ya chakula kizuri kinacho unajua unatarajia ije. Utamfukuza, mwambie aende ama utaacha amalize? Akasema of course utaacha amalize. Akasema basi nyinyi mnanusia yale ambayo nimefanya, wacheni nimalize. Ndio alikuwa anataka kwa second term. Na vile alivyosema hivyo, wengi wetu tulikuwa tumetoka katika chama cha ODM, tulikuwa tuna support pande nyingine, lakini alitushawishi kabisa, na nikaendelea na safari yangu ya uongozi naye. Ndio baadaye nikaweza kukutana na Rais Uhuru Kenyatta, ambao tukakuwa marafiki. Na hata wakati huo akiwa bado rais, na tukiwa tunafanya kazi na Rais Uhuru Kenyatta ambaye alikuwa treasury, alikuwa bado tunazungumza, alikuwa anatuma mawaziri wake kwangu kwa ushauri. So ni mtu namkumbuka sana, alikuwa na imani kubwa sana kwa vijana, na ni kiongozi ambao itabidi tuige mfano wake ambao aliwacha, ya kuwa kiongozi ambaye hauna ile kutatishana, unajua hana maneno ya kuzua hisia mbaya kwa Kenya. Alikuwa mcheshi sana wakati mwingi, alikuwa anajua kupunguza tension. Na hiyo ndio jambo ambalo tunahitaji wakati huu ambapo tunaenda kwa election. Tusichochea wananchi, tuweze kuwatuliza. Hata kama unajowania viti ama tunagombea viti tofauti, tuweze kutuliza wananchi.
Na Bwana Sakaja, ni mengi sana tumeyashuhudia wakati Rais Kibaki alikuwa uongozini: free primary education, infrastructure na kadhalika, uchumi ukapanda kwa 7%. Kipi ambacho tunafaa kujifunza na uongozi wa Rais Kibaki?
Ambacho kujifunza, alikuwa kweli ame vizuri katika hatamu ya Rais Mwai Kibaki. Hela kutoka nchi za nje au wafadhili 7% peke yake. 93% ya bajeti yetu ilikuwa ni matokeo au utolezi wa Wakenya, mshuru yetu. Kwa hivyo Wakenya waliweza kupata mikopo kwa banks. Wale ambao wanafanya biashara waliweza kupata mikopo kwa banks. Wakati huu nafikiri tumepunguza. Sasa ni ngumu sana kwa Wakenya kupata hizo mikopo, ndio maana unapata watu wanasema kuna pesa mfukoni. Nafikiri ile serikali ambayo tunatarajia ije baada ya kura hii ya mwezi wa August, lazima ifikirie njia ambapo itabadilisha mfumo wa uchumi ama fiscal consolidation, ili tuweze kupatia Wakenya headroom kuweza kupata mikopo ili wakufanya biashara. Otherwise Wakenya wameumia sana. Tunaweza ona miundo msingi, tunaona mabarabara, tunaona stima na mambo mazuri sana, lakini wakati hakuna cash flow kwa wananchi, watasema hawezi kula barabara, watasema hawezi kupeleka watoto wao katika hizo shule ambazo mmezijenga. So lazima kuwe na balance. Nafikiri aliweza kubalance kwa sababu yeye alikuwa mtu wa alikuwa economist, unajua, so alikuwa anaelewa. Na pia kuweza kujua siasa si uadui. Mwai Kibaki aliweza kufanya handshake ya kwanza hapa Harambee House. Aliweza kwenda kumuita Raila Odinga ambaye alikuwa amemshinda, akasema hapana, hatuwezi endelea na mambo ambayo iko, ile vita iko, tuzungumze. So just the ability kuangalia across the divide, kusema nimeenda pande hii, fanya na yule ambaye kwa pande ile nyingine. Na ni jambo ambalo mimi nimeshikilia tangu wakati huo. Hata kabla hii handshake ilifanyika, nakumbuka ndugu yangu Babu Wino akiwa amewekwa jelani, nilienda nikamtoa kule korokoroni. Ndugu yangu mwingine alikuwa anapigwa na watu wa Jubilee, nikamzuia. Nikasema hapana, siasa haiwezi kuwa uadui. Siasa tu ni kuchagua kiongozi. Uwe ni kabila gani, uwe umetoka pande gani ya nchi yetu, lazima tuwe na siasa safi. So hiyo ni jambo ambalo Rais Mwai Kibaki alitufunza na lazima idumu katika taifa letu.
Kwa wananchi wa Othaya na wa Kenya kwa jumla, wakati tunaelekea katika uchaguzi mkuu, neno lako?
Ningependa kuambia watafute, kwanza nawaambia pole wananchi wa Othaya. Tutajumuika nao tukija kumzika rais wetu. Othaya ni pale nimekuwa mara mingi sana, wakati alikuwa rais na pia baadaye nikiwa mwenyekiti wa chama cha TNA, na ni watu wazuri, wanapenda biashara, wanapenda kufanya kazi yao, ni wakulima wa chai, na ni watu ambao wanapenda mambo ya ukulima. Ningependa kuambia tukielekea kwa uchaguzi watafute viongozi ambao wanazaiga mfano wa Rais Mwai Kibaki. Viongozi ambao hawataki kuchochea wananchi, viongozi ambao wanazingatia jambo ambalo ni muhimu zaidi katika taifa letu leo hii, ni mambo ya uchumi, mambo ya gharama ya maisha. Vitu zimepanda bei, ukiona mafuta imetoka 250 imefika 400, unga imeenda 200. Hali ya maisha ni ngumu. So watafute viongozi ambao wanataka kuzingatia mambo ya uchumi, sio wale ambao wanaongea tu mambo ambayo hayaeleweki kule juu. Watu wakubwa, yale watu wadogo, wananchi wa kawaida ndio muhimu.
Shukrani sana gavana, na tunakutakia kila laheri katika ndoto zako na Nairobi.
Asante sana, shukuru, na tubaki pamoja kama Wakenya.
Shukrani sana. Asante sana. Huyo si mwingine ila ni mwaniaji wa ugavana katika kaunti ya Nairobi, Bwana Johnston Arthur Sakaja, na mimi, na pia awali nimezungumza na gavana wa West Pokot kutoka katika majengo ya bunge ambapo Rais Mwai hayati Rais Mwai Kibaki atakuwa hapa bungeni kuanzia leo hadi siku ya Jumatano, ambapo Wakenya na raia watapata fursa ya kuweza kumpatia heshima zake za mwisho. Tuko hapa tumekita kambi, tutakuwa kujia na kukupatia picha kamili ya yale yote ambayo yanafanyika hapa. Rais Uhuru Kenyatta tayari ameshawasili hapa. Nimeweza pia kumuona kinara wa R.I.P na pia kinara Martha Koome ambaye ni Chief Justice, ambaye wote wamefika hapa. Maspika wote wa mabunge yote mawili, Senate na bunge la kitaifa, pia nimeweza kuwashuhudia wakifika hapa makusudi tu kuweza kupeana heshima zao za mwisho kwa mwenda zake aliyetangulia mbele za haki, Rais hayati Mwai Kibaki. Na kuregesha moja kwa moja hadi studio zetu za KBC. Mimi nikiwa hapa niko na wenzangu kina Beatrice Gatonye pamoja na Kipnusu. Tutakuwa tunakuletea picha kamili ya jinsi mambo yalivyo na jinsi mambo yanavonoga katika eneo hili. Kutoka katika maeneo ya bunge, mimi ni Isaac Lemoka.
Asante sana mwenzangu Isaac Lemoka pamoja na timu yote kutoka maeneo ya bunge, ambako wananchi sasa wataendelea na shughuli ya kutizama mwili wa aliyekuwa rais wa 3 wa Jamhuri ya Kenya, mzee Mwai Kibaki, na shughuli hiyo itafanyika kwa siku 3 kuanzia leo hadi siku ya Jumatano. Na siku ya Ijumaa kutakuwa na ibada ya wafu itakayofanyika katika uwanja wa Nyayo, na baadaye mazishi kufanyika katika kaunti ya Nyeri, eneo bunge la Othaya ambalo Rais Mwai Kibaki aliweza kuwakilisha kwa muda wa miaka mingi. Victor Olo, obviously because we'll be linking up even with Wahome, who is already in studio, but I'm just thinking about President Kibaki post retirement. There is a man who completely kept off public affairs after his exiting from office.
That's exactly what Minister Munyao said, that that was President Mwai Kibaki for you. Even during his time as a president, he never used to have that kind of antagonism in his cabinet. He never used to comment on anything. What he used to do was to focus on his main agenda and make sure that everything was done according to his desire. And that is exactly who President Kibaki was. You know, he was non-confrontational. He lived a very low life. And people who know him said that quite often he would frequent the golf courses to play his favorite game, the golf, you know, the Mudaiga, Karen, Machakos. He would go there, relax, and later on have a chit-chat with the friends and go back home. Matters politics, he completely kept off. And I think that showed his stature of a statesman. Once you've gone home, you live your life and let other people run the government. Okay,
Yeah,
we've been here.
That's